What is up, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Stay tuned for deep dives. My name is Carter, and I'm here with my lovely co-host Tori. And Tori, today is a special day.
It is. It's a very special day.
It's an
It's May 7th.
anniversary. Yes, an anniversary that us Clue Crew people will remember forever.
Yeah, there's really two.
There
April
is
1st
two.
and also May 7th.
Yes.
So,
and
yes.
they're going to be like significant to Clue Crew history, I feel like, because we finally got the continuation of a series that we weren't sure would continue.
Yeah, so obviously if you are catching this episode on release day, it is the 1-year anniversary of Mystery of the Seven Keys releasing.
Yeah.
So we have donned our shirts once again.
Yep.
And we are going to unlock Mystery of the Seven Keys
in
once
today's
again,
episode.
In today's
yes.
episode. All the things. We're gonna walk down memory lane and talk about the game itself. And yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be exciting, I feel like, because we both have just been looking forward to, like, we love doing the Eras episodes. But we are also just ready to launch off into all the other
topics that we have. Yeah, I know.
And this feels special.
It does, and I feel like it's the perfect episode to happen right after the Eras, and also the fact that it's occurring on the anniversary, because I feel like what's the most current thing that the Clue Crew has experienced and been through, and it is the release and the pre-release of Mystery of the Seven Keys, which I mean, oh my gosh, we get to talk about that today in this episode. It's actually one of the first things that we're going to dive to is where it all began. And I feel like the most appropriate question to ask is like, where were you April 1st in 2023? Which feels crazy to say, but that's when the public releases started coming out.
Well, public releases that we caught on to. I know we're going to talk. Anyway, but yes, April 1st, 2023 has now gone down in history as, like, it's called Clue Crew Day. Yes, I believe.
It is called Clue Crew Day.
It's kind of the self-adopted name. But yes, where was I? I remember, so that was, I believe, it was a Saturday morning. And I see this newsletter, like the monthly newsletter from Her Interactive, in my email inbox. No big deal. Like, they've sent those. I thought nothing of it. I opened that baby up, and suddenly my alarm bells were going off. Like, there's some weird stuff in here. Like, it was very obvious that it had coded messages, and then the note from Nancy at the end. And I'm like, what is happening? And I actually was pretty well convinced. I would say I was like 99.9% convinced. I was like, I do not think this is an April Fool's joke, because they are already in such hot water with the fans. I was just like, I don't think they're foolish enough to toy with us like that. So I was very much like, I thought, oh my word, I think they're actually getting ready to tell us something about a new game. And it was very exciting and uncertain.
Thrilling.
You remember, like, all the other things that happened, like suddenly all the social media posts disappeared, and I just remember suddenly I felt like a kid again.
Yes, that's exactly how I felt.
Waiting for a new Nancy Drew game. It's like, what's going on? And then for me specifically, the other thing I remember about that day is that Hugh Miller did one of the first of many of his, he called them, I think, discussion live streams.
Yes.
And he literally just said, hey guys, I'm going live at this time. If you want to just get on and let's just chat about what we think is going on. And I just remember kind of the, like, all the
energy.
There was like this nervous but eager energy. Like, I feel like a lot of people really did feel like, oh my goodness, we're getting a new game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my story. Like, but what were you thinking on April 1st when that newsletter dropped?
Well, I woke up really early that morning. I think I had to work. And so I have to usually wake up at like 5 something in the morning. And so I had gotten a DM at like 12:30 in the middle of the night. So that was like what I woke up to, and I look at my phone and I had this message from a random Instagram user on my Nancy Drew Times account, and they were like, "Hey, have you seen the Her Interactive newsletter that just went out?" Or actually, no, it wasn't that. It was, "Hey, have you seen Her Interactive social media? All their posts have disappeared. Dot dot dot. What do you think's going on?" Or something along those lines. It was very like, I was like, so I woke up and I was like, "Wait, what?" And so I click on their Instagram page, and it was gone. Everything had disappeared. And the very first thing that I thought was, "Oh, they must have got hacked," which is so funny because that's a,
Congratulations, Big Three. You nailed it.
no, seriously, I literally thought they got hacked because I've seen Instagram pages where there's like everything's gone. And I was like, "Oh no, someone hacked their account." And I screenshotted it and instantly shared it to my Instagram stories. And thus began a year long of me interacting with the fandom very closely on my Instagram stories. It just became like a way of just updating and posting. And
Yeah.
anytime someone would message me, I would share it. And it was really thrilling and very fun. And exactly the way that you say it is exactly how I felt. I felt like a kid again. And I will say right now, and I've said it throughout the whole time, that the marketing plan, what they did, was the most brilliant thing that could have ever been done, ever. It was so genius. It worked. It was awesome. It just was the best thing ever. And I felt like a kid again. I was feeling like the anticipation of waiting for something that I knew was to come. I agree with you. I didn't think it, I didn't, I had more faith and belief that it wasn't an April Fool's joke. I did share. I was like, I don't think this is an April joke. I hope it's not. I actually shared a meme. If you remember in Secret of the Scarlet Hand, when the very ending of the game, spoiler alert for the culprit, just so if you're listening, Taylor Sinclair, he at the very end goes, "Blast you, Nancy Drew," like that. And I shared that clip, and I was like, my reaction if this is an April Fool's joke. And I, not being serious, but just being funny, like in a lighthearted way, because I really didn't in my heart believe that it was going to be a joke. I was like, no, nothing of this utmost paramount degree that they are pushing this would be a joke. I was like, it just can't be. It has to be. There's too many clues and puzzles and fun things. Like, there's just no way. And so, but I remember, oh my gosh, I remember Hugh's videos and just all of the live streams that people were doing and the posts that people were making and the accounts that were created. Actually, a lot of accounts that are still going now that are making content creation were started during this time. And so it was fun because, things, people were emerging, and like all of this was just forming and happening. And it was very, very fun. But that's where I was during the very beginnings of all of that.
Yes. Well, and then do you remember that there was that window of silence between the newsletter and
Yes.
them posting that laptop video on YouTube that said, where they did the whole like always say sorry, we can't, no news, like, act like they basically made fun of themselves like all the times they'll say like they can't tell us anything, and then they
Uh-huh.
backspaced and they're like, "No, we are happy to announce we are working on game 34." But I just remember, you remember those like, it was like, I think it was 3 days of just basically the Clue Crew was left to completely spiral
Yes.
over everything. And then it became good little detectives that we are. Everyone just went to town on everything, like the newspaper. You remember the cop who, remember that cop
Yes.
who gave newspaper, and the moment when Gooba and Jetpack uncovered
Yes.
like the trademark number, which
Was the on
also,
the
I mean,
number of the newspaper.
yes, and again, we have to thank Charity Chaz versus Jazz, because she had already discovered like There's this thing called Mystery of the Seven Keys that
Mm-hmm.
her
That's very
interactives
pivotal
got a
to this
trademark
whole
for.
story. Yes.
Yes. But I remember like kind of all the buzz around that, but even that kind of like it's like okay, well, they haven't told us anything. But then I remember that moment of when they found the number, like guys, that's the trademark number. Like Gooba
Mm-hmm.
and Chetback found that number and it's like, oh, and so it was just that further confirmation like,
Yes.
oh my word. So game 34 is Mystery of the Seven Keys. Like that's what
Yes.
it is. And then
Because
also,
oh no, I
oh,
was
go
gonna say
ahead.
no, I was gonna say I think we should mention so Charity, Chaz versus Jazz, her
She's doing
finding
so
yeah,
yes.
her finding that
That was
stuff
pivotal. It
that
was.
it was pivotal, but also too because it was the first I think time
Yes.
that was happening. People really weren't sure how to take it at first, because we weren't sure what it was going to be. We knew that her
Right.
interactive had done different ventures, and I think people were kind of split on whether or not it was going to be a new game. And so yes, when all of that stuff finally started coming out and that trademark matched what Charity had found, it was like, okay, wait a minute, this finally is now bridging. And because I actually
Right.
remember I have it archived in my Instagram story. I can go back when Charity did find that, and all of the Clue Crew content creators were making videos about it. Caitlin from Wizard Kitten, Hugh Ninja Drew Walkthroughs, Goobin Jetpack made a video, Argle Thump made a video. Everybody was making a video about what does this mean, and I had shared a story about like, hey guys, like, what do you think, about this? Do you think it means this? Like, I don't know. I'm really hopeful it does, but I guess we'll find out, with time. That's kind of what my take was on it, and I had a lot of people that just still were in that camp of I'm unsure and I don't want to be too hopeful yet. And literally around this time, this is when people start like putting their hearts more into it. They're like, wait a minute, this is real. So it was very exciting, I think, to see that unfolding
Yeah.
among the fans.
Yes. I would also like to give a particular shout out to, oh, this is such a fond memory. Do you also think about how quickly we convinced ourselves it's a Shakespeare game?
Oh my gosh, we were on that path for a minute.
Convinced.
So
Convinced.
convinced.
So convinced. Which, for the record, I want the Shakespeare game. Her Interactive, if you're
Yes.
listening, give us the Shakespeare game. Anyway, we would like to, I think we just kind of want to hit some of like the highlights of that marketing experience. And I would just encourage everyone, if you really just are looking for a very fun, thorough walk down memory lane with this, I would suggest that you go to, honestly, go to both places because they
Yes,
both
both
did a great job.
websites.
So,
Both.
um, Kalina did a very thorough timeline breakdown, I think, on her website. So
Yes.
you can go to, so check out Story Retold, or also, again, Hugh's website, ND Walkthroughs. He
Yes.
also has a very thorough timeline. And I would just like to like personally shout him out again because prepping for these notes, that helped me keep track of some things that I wanted to make sure that we hit on
Oh
in this
yes.
episode. So if you just want to relive every moment, go for it. And you can also like those discussion live streams, the live streams that Kalina did, Hugh did, other people, like they are still on YouTube. You can relive the memories. And it's actually funny, like people have actually said to me that they actually have they have nostalgia for this time, which is fun. It's interesting, it didn't happen that long ago, but it was such a uniting and special moment that it's already created a certain sense of like, oh yeah, what a great time to be a member of the Clue Crew, which I think is amazing. Again, we cannot shout out the big three, Rue, Indy, Brigella, enough for this little master plan that they came up with of marketing.
Oh yeah.
So,
And
I
just
took note of, go ahead.
just what you were saying, like I guess because if you've been listening to our episodes and you've been building up to this one, doesn't this time just start to feel like, the old Her Interactive?
It
That's
did.
kind of what it felt
It
like.
did. I genuinely did feel the magic again of like, this
Hmm.
is how it felt when a new Nancy Drew game was coming out.
That's why I say it's the most
Yeah.
genius marketing thing they could have done, because it was like a return to old form, and it just made sense. I was like, yes,
Yes.
give us this kind of action where it's like fans and company unite. Like, yes. So, anyways,
Yes.
just wanted to say
Yes.
yes, yes, yes.
Yes. So some things I remember that particularly stand out to me from all of this that we would just like to reminisce upon a little bit.
It
You remember the okay, so they password protected a
was so
page on the
awesome.
website. And then someone ended up figuring out the password early. And you should remember, I don't know if you remember like how you felt coming onto that web page for the first time and
Amazing.
seeing like that cafe, Hungerkünstler cafe
Oh,
screenshot
so
was there.
cool.
And they ended up, I thought really cool how they kind of turned that into like our center of operations. Like here's my center of operations, my desk. Instead, they made it this website.
Yes.
And I do you
Command
remember like
Central.
the obsession over when they started putting the icons and
And
they
what that
changed
would like.
colors.
Yes,
It
yes.
would yes, the immediate like the people would come, rolling into a group chat like, "Guys, the icon changed. Like it changed colors." And us trying to figure out, okay, what does it mean when it's this
Are we getting
color? And
closer? Or like, what are we
yeah,
doing?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, and
yeah.
trying to figure like, what might they be hinting at next based on I think they had like a microphone symbol one time and just yeah, all these little things. So trying to figure out like what are they getting ready to tell us? Now, I'm curious, did you start to live your life at all on minute 34
Oh,
of the clock?
gosh. I tried so hard. Oh my goodness. Trying to balance when you're at work and you just know something's going to happen on the 34-minute mark. Oh gosh. I'd be like, sorry, I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go to the bathroom right at this very minute. Yeah, no, it was awesome though. The anticipation
Yes,
was real.
we all lived according to the 34th minute for actual months. I
Yes.
remember literally they set alarms, they set their
Yes.
watches to it to just be ready and see if anything
Was going to
dropped.
happen. Yep.
And another I remember really crazy great moment was the witching hour streams
Oh, yes.
because
Ooh,
we were anticipating like,
so
oh,
late.
we gotta stay up. We gotta put a password in at midnight. And then I was like, whose midnight is this? Well, it's Her Interactive's midnight, which meant us poor like people,
Everyone else on the other
Central
side.
Eastern, like too bad, so sad. Like you're staying up until the middle of the night.
Yes.
And so I remember like Hugh and Kalina, but again, what heroes, like doing those live streams in the middle
Yes.
of the night and breaking the website. We broke the website. I don't know how many times because of how much traffic we put on it.
Mm-hmm.
Anagrams, Carter. Hilda Swenson, eat your heart out. So many anagrams. I can't look at a random string of capital letters anymore and
And
not
not think
assume,
it's a puzzle.
not think there's an anagram in it somehow. And we just need okay, can we please? Can we please talk about this moment? Because I kind of alluded to this at the beginning. Like April 1st, 2023 is when the fans, realized something was going on. But it turns out these clever marketing ladies, they were teasing us in 2022, I think. And
Yes.
yes,
I think that's as early as it was when it
they
started.
they had been teasing us for months, and we did not realize. And you were directly a part of this. It's still like one of
Wild.
my all time favorite like fandom moments. Period. Was that? And
Yes.
I looked up the date. Y'all need to just go and rewatch Hugh's May 9th, 2023 discussion stream because I think like a puzzle had come out that day. So we solved it. But then we just stayed on and people were combing through old social media posts. And then you got to join. And I don't want to tell the story. I think you should tell the story. Like, please, do you remember? Like, what? happened? Because that moment was absolute craziness.
It was absolute craziness, and it's funny because I actually wasn't on camera because I was not prepared to be on camera because the drops were always so random, and so when I was hopping on, I was totally in my PJs, my PJs, and so I was like, "Ooh, I can't be on camera," so I was just audio only, and Hugh and I were going through and we're like looking at puzzles and stuff, and I think Hugh actually brought up there was some graphic and he was like, yeah, this kind of looks like this is like a map that's blurred out. Kind of looks like the Danger by Design map or something like that. And I was agreeing and I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, it looks like there's something that's written down at the bottom right there, maybe. And he was like, oh yeah, it does. Oh my gosh, it says Prague. That says Prague. And me with the utmost casualness. Oh yeah, it does look like it says that says Prague. And
Yes,
yeah,
that's so funny.
no, it was super funny. And literally
You
that
two were a tale of two fans because I feel like you must have gone out of you must have gone into like nurse mode where you were the
I was so like shocked that we
cool,
found that.
calm,
And
chill,
so
collected
I
one.
don't think I knew how to react to that moment. I was like, there is absolutely no way that we are uncovering this from like 6 months ago. And I just was like, I don't think I just didn't know how to react. And it's so funny. Hugh
Well,
is like very
he more
up.
than yeah, he made up for it.
Yes, yes. He was
He lost
super
his mind.
excited. He lost his mind. Yes, it was very fun. And yeah, and then at that moment we were like, wait a minute. The mystery is happening in Prague. Like we know. Like and then we just kept combing through more stuff and we were finding more blurred images that were being used. We didn't know exactly what they were, but we knew
Yes.
that they were for that game. Later to find out they were blurred images of like the coffee shop decor or the coffee machine. So it was really cool though that we got to experience that together.
Yeah. And I also the one I really remember is it was an amateur sleuth blog post and they had these puzzle pieces all over and
Yes, yeah.
Hugh started messing with
Piecing them
um
together and stuff.
he started messing with like the coloring and stuff and
Oh yeah.
he realized that they had hidden words
Yeah.
on
Oh yeah.
top of the puzzle
With the
pieces.
letters. Yes. Yes.
Yes, and
Yes.
it spelled out, it said, "We are sending you messages." Oh, they were.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
they were. And we were not prepared. So, yes. So now I'm curious, it'll be like in future. I don't know if it's changed the way you like anytime they put stuff up out now. I know it makes me pay just a little bit more attention to things that don't look familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Cause like I don't want to get fooled twice. But probably they're too smart for us. And you know, whenever they're ready to start talking about a game 35, hopefully they'll probably do it a totally different way because they got
I
to
was
keep
gonna
us on
say
our
that
toes.
I have wondered before. I'm like, I wonder how they'll do Game 35. Obviously not in the same way, I don't think, but I do wonder. I'm like, what
Yeah.
other tricks do they have up their sleeves?
We shall see. And so yeah, kind of just I don't know. That was just such a crazy, like exciting, thrilling time just kind of waiting for the next teaser to drop and then everything kept building and building and then we finally got to it was April 15th, 2024. So we're talking over a year. We went through this thrill like that's quite a high to be living on constantly for over a year.
Oh yeah.
This was happening. And then we got to the Puzzle Palooza. And that was the one like and that was actually I do remember people feeling like guys, this does not feel like an accident that they are suddenly just going to
Rain us with
hit
puzzles.
us. Yeah,
Yes.
like I remember people did feel like, "Oh, I feel like this is building up to something big. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
ready to get the like official trailer." Cuz we had gotten that teaser one. So we had the confirmation like, "Yes, it's in Prague. Yes, it's called Mystery of the Seven Keys." Like so we had gotten that little one, but you know, we're ready now. Like give us the big one. And so then they did that whole fest of like they're posting puzzles every few hours, including the middle of the night. And I was one of those people because I don't think I had to be anywhere the next day. I'm like, you know what? You only live once. Like I'm staying up. I'll get little snatches of sleep. I'm gonna set an alarm. I'll wake up and see if another puzzle shows up. And that was I remember that was my good King Wenceslas
I
moment.
remember that.
My one I feel like claim to fame, and I feel like I peaked in life
No, you
because
didn't.
I figured out good King Wenceslas was in that little sheet, those little sheet music snippets they kept putting in. And I still remember like Rue messaging me saying, I just want you to know we had to create a whole new puzzle because you figured it out too soon.
Yeah, you
Like
did.
that was a really, I was like, oh my goodness, I have peaked in life. Can I put this on my resume? Like I outsmarted her interactive because it's something this amazing will never happen again. And then it did build up to the trailer,
Which, oh my gosh, what was
which was
your.
also a shocking moment.
No, it
Because
was. And what was your overall, just like, you're watching the trailer, right? Like, it drops. It's like, is this the biggest movie of the summer is what it feels like. And you're watching it, and what is your I actually have a video of me reacting to the trailer that I had posted. So I actually went back and rewatched it, and I got to like relive what was my first reactions, and it was really
that's
it
great.
yeah, it was very
And
nostalgic to
you did
see.
didn't you also, was that the one, didn't you do a live stream
I think
analysis?
yes, I did.
I
I
think.
forgot about that. I did.
I remember talking to you about the
I did.
trailer.
I totally
I must have
forgot.
done
I
that.
did a live stream where I like kind of broke down my thoughts on the trailer, but I was curious to know like what were you thinking when you watched the trailer, because that was such big news. I feel like, people were not expecting that.
Well, yeah, I remember I just felt like my head was absolutely spinning and I just like couldn't even take in all of the information. I do remember feeling some of that excitement, like, oh yeah, like this looks better than Midnight in Salem. Yay! Like, which I can talk more about that later when we get into our own thoughts on the game.
Sure.
But actually to be honest, well, I feel, yeah, I think it was fun to kind of do the breakdowns like with you and other people like who did like they're literally going at like they have the video way slowed down. They're pulling out individual screenshots to just kind of piece everything together. Like it definitely, I was very excited. I remember actually I think what really got me excited as I recall was when I saw the alchemy lab for the first
Oh,
time,
yeah.
because I remember why. This is how I remember I had so many feelings of, oh, it feels a little bit like Curse of Blackmore Manor, like which is one of my favorite games and also a
Mhm.
golden era game as we have
Sure.
talked about. So that I was kind of feeling this like, oh, like it does feel like maybe they're going back to some of that, yeah, some of that magic of previous things. But really, honestly, what was the most shocking thing was, and I think that truly none of us were prepared for, was at the very end of that trailer, they literally just dropped like not even a pre-order date. They just said, this game's coming
This
out in
is
3 weeks. Like this is it. 3 weeks from now, May 7th, this game is coming out. Like here it is, which is amazing because you called it. Remember, you made a whole post about possible release dates, and you chose May 7th. So hats off to you, sir. You're a little prediction king. It's not the first time you've made a bold prediction and it worked out.
Which I was so
Like
shocked by.
that's what I remember. That's actually
Yeah.
what I remember is how shocking it was. Like, wait, what? 3 weeks? I'm not ready. Like I no, I need more time to prepare. Like I thought there was going to be a pre-order window, and I'm like,
Uh-huh.
what? 3 weeks from now, I'm going to be playing a new Nancy Drew game like that. It was just
I,
crazy.
I remember that too. I remember people were not expecting that, and they were not
Oh,
prepared for the fact that it released in just a few weeks. And I think everyone had to like gather their bearings almost a little bit, because they were like, whoa, 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 whoa. You mean it's like it's done? Like the game is actually finished and we can buy it in 3 weeks? This is not something like
yeah.
you're sending us the trailer and the game is like another 6 months away or something like that. Like, no, like the game is done. Like,
Yes.
yeah, I remember
Or
that.
the infamous Midnight in Salem problem where they did give us a release
Right.
date and then they had to come out with the oops. sorry, it's not ready yet.
Which I think that there was maybe some, you know, still some
I think
hesitation. I think people were
yes.
still on the I'll believe it when I see it type of deal, but it was a very exciting time, and I was just so excited. I mean, when I watched that trailer, I remember also thinking, I'm like, which again, we can get to when we get to our thoughts in the game. This looks good. This actually looks like it could be something special. And so it was just such a fun time. So many good memories come out of that marketing plan that they did, and the fandom
It
in
really came to life
in a long
for the
time.
first time in years,
In a long
actual
time.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, there was just so much activity just instantly. Actually, and this is something that I would like to mention maybe as a segue as we get into the next topic, is just that this marketing thing, I specifically remember, and if I have the picture, I'll make sure to share it. I took a screenshot right as they had their page look like they had been hacked and there was no more post on there.
Oh.
And if I remember the numbers correctly, they only had 17,000 followers on Instagram. They now have 28,000 followers. That marketing that they did
Whew.
just exploded their page. And I don't think it's just from fans returning after all that had happened. It was also new fans, new people coming in. And I just, hats off to them. I truly think the marketing that they did everything right that it could. It got fans pulled them in together, brought in new people, and they were able to market a game in a way that they had never done before. So it was
Yeah.
awesome. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
I think I feel like I just only have good things to say about yes, that marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Um for those reasons because it accomplished its purpose. Like, oh
Yes,
yeah, you're going to market a new game, that's the way to do it. But then
absolutely.
even also, many of us can testify to like some genuine friendships amongst people came out of that time. And I think a
Hey,
lot of
ours
people
did.
no, it didn't. Technically, it didn't.
It didn't.
Technically, it did.
It didn't technically with Key, but it definitely strengthened though during this time.
Yeah, it did strengthen. I mean, we already had known each other for a few months before that. But yes,
Sure.
I mean, as always, but it certainly got both of us connected to other people that we would have had no reason to talk to or be friends with
Yeah.
otherwise. So,
Sure.
yeah, hats off to the big 3 once more for marketing your game in a brilliant way, getting the current fan base intrigued and excited about it, bringing in new people, but then also, yeah, fostering some deeper community
Oh yeah.
among people.
As far as the game itself, the game
Yeah.
comes out.
Marketing versus the actual game. What happens now that it's out?
Now it's out.
How do
Now,
people actually respond to it?
right. And now, Her Interactive had like kind of developed this, what they called launch day team, which both of us were able to be honored to be on. This was a group of people that they reached out to help promote their game. And so all of us, I feel like, went into consume mode and probably spent the next month and a half, 2 months, pretty much the summer, I would say, the fandom and all of the people that were a part of this launch team just consuming this game, kind of going into their
It was
cave.
like a little hibernation period. Yes,
Yeah, it
that's what
was because the fandom had been like super active, and then all of a sudden it was just like
and then
whoosh,
I
everyone
remember
consumed the
like
game.
I don't know if it's possible for a social media platform to feel quiet, but I do remember like suddenly I was like, my Instagram feed feels quiet. It was like everyone had just gone bye bye
Yeah,
because we're all either playing this game or we're waiting to get our copy because of those people who had to wait for the Steam release or the
yeah,
physical release. So yeah, it was a really kind of an interesting like I don't know if I would say jarring, but it definitely was a big adjustment to go from all of that hype and everyone's chatting constantly to suddenly it's like yes, we all just kind of retreated into our little caves as you said
yes.
because well, now I gotta actually play the game.
Yes, and
And then seeing how people started to come out the other side. And now we're getting like, okay,
right.
so what do we all actually think of it
Right. Now
now that it's
now the people's
here?
opinions are starting to come out slowly, like slowly. I remember seeing like, okay, oh, here's one person's review. Oh, here's another person's review. And and mostly that was like launch day people because I feel like that's who I knew the most and that I've followed. But then I started seeing
Yeah.
like actual Steam reviews start coming in. So the
Yeah,
Steam
because the Steam
reviews,
release was over the summer at
right,
some point. Yeah.
right. So the hibernation period is starting to like lift, and now people are like sharing these mixed reviews about Mystery of the Seven Keys. And so now it's coming down to, I think, the nitty gritty, like what is the positives and what are the negatives of this game, because
Yeah.
it's not just like we knocked it out of the park, this is the like best Nancy Drew game. That would be an exaggeration. Like obviously there are some critiques and there are some improvements. And what did the fans think?
Yeah, so that's kind of interesting because I definitely feel like when you now look at, and we're going to kind of talk through now just what seems to be just the general um perception and reaction to Mystery of the Seven Keys, like certainly as good as the marketing was, like it doesn't seem to have, I feel like, created some sort of like, well, everyone just went into the game with rose colored glasses on, and so you're kind of getting this almost like inflated view of like everybody thinks, wow, what a great game, best game ever. Like genuinely, my assessment is, as I was trying to look around and just see, I get the sense like mixed mixed reviews. If you go on the Steam page and you look at what it says, and of course Steam always will do that, it'll call things like overwhelmingly positive or positive, mixed. Like the Steam page has basically from the beginning and still as of us recording this episode, if you look up Mystery of the Seven Keys on Steam, it says that the reviews are mixed. And I think that genuinely is the best way to describe it. So just going with Steam, the as of the notes that I gathered for this, it was 56% of the 224 Steam reviews are positive. So I mean, you're basically talking. So there's a little bit more positive than negative, but that honestly, that's really close to being a 50-50 split.
Oh,
And then I did,
and I let me just interject here so everybody
yes,
knows.
please.
All of the people that did receive the product for free, their review doesn't count. So even though
Yes.
any of us who may have been more favorable because we're already like, involved and, know the games and our fans, our reviews, if we had left like all the stars and all the praise, those wouldn't have counted towards that 56% score. So these are only people that
Yes.
purposely went and purchased the game and what their thoughts are.
Yes. And then I will just point out this is a much lower number, but Her Interactive also has a section on their website where you can also review Mystery of the Seven Keys directly on their website. But that one only has, as of my last checking, it was 87 reviews, so a much smaller number. And the average rating was 4 stars. And which, so that's more positive. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like there's probably something to like someone who was willing to buy the game directly from Her Interactive, especially because they were still using Digital River at the time, and like Digital River, the Digital River Her Interactive drama, like that's been a whole thing in the last few months. Like
And
people who were, I feel like people who were willing to get the game that way probably maybe are already a little bit more, shall we say, probably more favorably inclined in their like attitudes towards Her Interactive as a company, and maybe like, and I hope I'm not in saying that, like I'm not trying to say like if you went on Steam or you went on Her Interactive, like if you've gone and you've negatively reviewed the game, like I'm not saying, well, you're just biased, like you're just
right.
an angry, bitter, like that's not what I'm saying at all.
Sure.
If you have genuine reasons for not liking this game, like that is your onion, and your onion is as valid as the next person's onion. But I thought it was interesting that the Steam reviews are much more of like basically almost a 50-50 split, like
Sure.
genuinely, truly mixed perception versus her interactive, like 4 out of 5 stars. Like that's pretty good. That's your average rating.
And
That like that's quite a difference. But I do think where you wanting to buy the game might say something a little bit of like how excited you were to play it, how willing you were
right.
to deal with like Digital River and buy the game directly from
And
her
I don't
interactive.
and I
So
don't say this
that's
to
my thoughts.
well, and I don't say this to be, accusatory at all, but I will say sometimes I find it harder to trust reviews on sites where I know that they can manage their own reviews just because like
Ah,
with Steam, it's a it Steam, they don't have to go through and delete people's reviews to make a game look better for their purposes because they get their finances
they're just the
through.
platform. Yeah, they're gonna get
Right.
their
So
cut no matter what.
I do find it harder to look at reviews like that in that sense because it's probably more honest on Steam, especially since Steam honors this like, well, if the person receives the product for free, we don't want them inflating the reviews in the direction of any way. So
Yes.
I do think that Steam is probably going to be more accurate in their reviews, if I had to guess.
Let's kind of break down now. Um, Kind of where the splits are happening because I think where people land on this game in general, I think it's very telling. It says to me a lot about kind of just like what are fans looking for out of Nancy Drew games. And even again, like if you hopefully you all have been able to listen to last week's episode about the modern era and Carter and I walking through kind of all the big shifts that happened. And I think it also I kind of get the sense it says a lot about where people are in terms of like how open are they to the modernization of Nancy Drew.
Yes.
In terms of the just the things I was noticing. So we can start with the positive. And would you agree with me, Carter? I feel like kind of almost like a number one principle that you're going to get from positive reviews of Mystery of the Seven Keys is something along the lines of it's better than Midnight in Salem. And it
I
shows that they
yes,
did listen to fan feedback. That seems to be a
absolutely.
very common, just about anyone who speaks positively about Mystery of the Seven Keys, they will mention that specific thing.
Oh,
That they
absolutely.
appreciate that it's better than Midnight in
I
Salem.
feel like that's the number one thing I always see that's pretty much in agreement with everybody. If
Yes.
you've played Midnight in Salem and you've played Mr. Seven Keys, generally more people are going to lean towards Mystery of the Seven Keys.
Yes. And also again, which I would say is important again because of kind of that um tenuous relationship that was created again because of her interactive kind of shifting their going from that very engaging time in the personal era where they were really interacting a lot
101 with
with
fans.
fans
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
going to that almost like total silence which then confused and frustrated people. I think it was very important like people wanted to felt like they wanted to feel like her interactive is listening to us. So
Absolutely.
that feeling of I also you'll see people comment on like they listened to us. Like Mystery of the Seven Keys has less dialogue than
Yep.
Midnight in Salem. That was a big criticism. People I remember they wanted more puzzles than Midnight in Salem has. Well, Mystery of the Seven Keys definitely had more puzzles. We can talk about it later a little
um,
bit, like what exactly was different people's responses to those puzzles. Um, People commented on did think genuinely the characters look better, the environments look better, more finished, more polished. I saw Carter. People did appreciate that Mystery of the Seven Keys did a much better job of making nods to the older games.
oh, yes.
You
I
can tell,
appreciated
like,
that.
if you can just tell us some of the things that they brought as like returning
Yeah.
elements
Yeah.
that had been
Probably.
sorely missing from Midnight in Salem.
Oh, I know. Yes, absolutely. Probably my favorite, my most favorite thing was the fact that the journal and the task list returned in a
That was a
more,
and
Yeah,
that was
and
a nice touch.
yeah, that made me feel
To make
like
it physical, I was so and we had
yes.
talked about that there was something that we felt was almost important to the essence of Nancy Drew, that it doesn't all need to be on her phone
Yeah.
and digital.
Yeah, and I really
Like,
do feel
this
that
girl
way
will
about
carry
Nancy Drew.
paper around.
Yes, exactly. Because that Nancy Drew, I feel like Nancy's supposed to be a
They
little
kind of
bit more old
balanced.
school. You know, I
Yeah.
feel like because she's, that's always been like the quirk about her, right? Like she's always stuck a little bit behind the times because she's not with all the current trends. So it almost feels kind of weird that she would be like all advanced like everybody else. So I always imagine, oh, she's got to be that person that whips out a little journal to take notes. Like even if people take notes on their phone and everything's digitized and digital, I just love the idea that Nancy always carries like something to write with and something to write on because that makes her
Yeah.
feel like a more detective-y. So
Yeah.
the fact that that came back was like huge to me. I loved
Yeah.
that.
And I feel like they tried to harmonize it because the journal was the physical item, the task
Mhm.
list was on the cell phone.
Exactly. And
But
I'm
actually,
totally fine with that. That's good. I can
now that
take that.
now that you said that, can this is such a subtle thing. Honestly, might be the number one old game reference that I loved the most about Mystery of the Seven Keys, and because I was not expecting it, it caught me by the most pleasant of surprise. Is when I played the game on Master Sleuth for the first time, and I opened up the phone to look at our task list. It said on the screen, "Because I'm a Master Sleuth, I don't need a task list." And I can tell you, I was not prepared for the joy that it brought me, because that is the thing. I remember the golden era and early
Mhm.
and experimental era journals. I remember, if you play those games on Senior Detective, or when it changed to Master Sleuth, I think that was actually later. Um, she will always say, "Because I'm a senior detective, I don't need a task list." I was like, that's
Yeah.
such a subtle thing, and yet
It's back.
I loved it. But yes, they did. And I again, this is another thing that my understanding is, I think we again can really credit the big three: Rue, Indy,
Mhm.
Brigella. I think really kind of spearheaded this effort to make sure that
Those things were included.
there were more connections to the older games. And then of course, like, Mystery of the Seven Keys is just jam packed with like little Easter egg references to the older games. It's kind of one of those things I almost want to like sit down and play the game sometime, just to like keep
Mhm.
a running list of like, here's every reference to an older Nancy Drew game, because they stuffed it.
Oh, they sure did. They were making sure that
Yeah.
all the fans were appreciated all throughout.
Yes,
And
and
then
again, I yeah. Well, and I do think again that just ties into they're trying to, I think, convey this sense, like, we do hear you.
yes.
We hear your criticisms. We are, just because maybe we're on a new path doesn't mean like
Oh yeah.
we're not listening. So, yes. But then in terms of, overall, I think we can talk now about like the overall sense, like, of the positive is, I saw very few people along the lines of like, they're just gushing about Mystery of the Seven Keys. Like, oh my word, this is the greatest game ever. This was an absolute home run. Like, there are some people who seem to feel that way about Mystery of the Seven Keys, and they enjoyed it
Yeah.
that much that they do consider it like it was a game that just knocked it out of the park. But my general sense, what I saw is, people are willing to commend it and say, I enjoyed this, and willing to acknowledge, like, I think it's a good game. But I think the general consensus is better than Midnight in Salem, still has room for improvement. So I feel like Mystery of the Seven Keys is kind of, from those people's perspective, sitting like in a middle area.
Yeah.
Like, here's the very low bar that needed to be crossed with Midnight in Salem. Better. But like, if you put, say, all the most beloved games are sitting up here somewhere,
Mhm.
like, Mystery of the Seven Keys is not there. It really is somewhere in between. That's the sense I kind of get from
I
people
agree.
who give positive reviews of this game.
I agree. I've actually seen some people mention, and I really like this as a comparison, and this will take you all back if you're listening here today. If you listen
I
to
think
our
I know what you're about to say.
yes, this will take you back to our classic era episode, and you may listen to that episode and heard us talk about how the first three games were like the most pivotal in the company, and how each one is almost like a stepping stone. Like Secrets Can Kill, this is their first game. They're really trying to take it with stride and figure out their footing as a company. And they get to Stay Tuned for Danger, and it's met with more favorable reviews. People are like really impressed. Like, ooh, now you have 3D characters, but your puzzles are still a little bit clunky and intuitive. It's difficult to like figure out what to do. And then they get Message in a Haunted Mansion, and they did it. They knocked it out of the ballpark, and
Yeah.
people loved that game, and that became like that's the turning point. And I've seen a lot of people compare this same thing to those same games like Midnight in Salem. It's like they just completely scratch what you know about Her Interactive and let's just start over. Midnight in Salem is essentially the Secrets Can Kill of its beginning era. So then Mystery of the Seven Keys would be like Stay Tuned for Danger. The graphics have improved. This is a step up from our first new game, but things are still a little bit confusing. Maybe you haven't quite figured out the stride of like what to do with all of this newness. Thus, meaning that the case of the missing clue would maybe be like our Message in a Haunted Mansion. And I've seen many people comment that that's what they feel
Yeah.
like that's happening, and I agree with that. I think that that's a very very valid thing to say about this, what we're stepping into. I think that that could definitely be the case. Maybe
Yeah.
that this is better than Midnight in Salem,
Possibly.
and then maybe the next game they will listen to the improvements of this one and make it even better.
That's definitely like the optimist in me.
Yeah,
That's definitely what I am hoping turns out to be the case. And
me
then I
too.
also do know, only because I had a conversation with someone recently about this, who raised the point, even just they feel more like Treasure in the Royal Tower is actually, they almost feel like even Message in a Haunted Mansion isn't quite like, it's not the standard. And they really feel like it's when you hit Treasure in the Royal Tower, like, yes, there it is. They've got it down.
I can see
And
that.
so this, they were just making the case to me like, actually I'd be willing to see like what a game 36, we were talking very specifically about music, but I think it applies in general, like if Her
Sure, sure,
Interactive
sure.
can get to game 36, yeah, kind of, maybe hopefully we're getting to a place where it's like, oh yeah, we might have something like, yeah, it's probably going to be different, but maybe like a new kind of good in its own way.
Absolutely.
So that's the positive. And now it's not all rosy, as we referenced. Like genuinely, these are mixed reviews. It's almost a 50-50 split on Steam between people who recommended it and do not. So I don't know, Carter, if you want to kind of talk through more, the
Yes.
people who absolutely do not like Mystery of the Seven Keys,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
what their perception and their criticisms are.
Sure, sure. I actually there are some criticisms here that I also feel very, which our thoughts are coming soon. But I'll try to harbor my own thoughts and just tell you what I have heard and know.
Save the editorializing
Right.
for
So
when it's our turn.
the first is that Mystery of the Seven Keys had what people said were bad puzzles, that they did not feel like they had enough knowledge prior to starting the puzzle to be able to solve the puzzle. So there's a little bit of some flaws there in the puzzle of the
Yeah,
games.
and
And
I feel like
and
people kind of felt like they just got thrown into the deep end and were given
yeah,
no
yeah.
assistance other than like, I have to check the strategy guide or get all the hints to even figure out what to do right now,
Right.
which is a frustrating. No one wants to feel like they can't solve it on their own. It's
Right.
not a good feeling.
It's also it's I would say probably something that's one of the like biggest elements of the Nancy Drew games is puzzles. And so for a lot of fans, this is a huge
Yeah.
aspect of what they love about the games are the
Yeah, it's not a
puzzles.
visual novel.
Right. And
The
so
puzzle-based mystery. Mhm.
it very valid concerns to be
Yeah.
having in people's reviews. Um, what about storylines and characters? What do you feel like the consensus there was
Well,
in
I
the negative
I just get the
reviews?
sense that for the story seems to be polarizing. I'm still trying to figure out why. I could find people who really liked Mystery of the Seven Keys story and others who just thought like this is terrible and I was so bored. I don't know exactly what to make of that. I'm wondering if it still maybe has something to do with, and we can get into this in the storylines episode, that the modern era, I think just because the games have gotten longer, the stories just there's just more to take in. So I
Yeah.
think that that's requiring a bit of an adjustment on our part to try to just take in more mystery, more
Mm-hmm.
subplots, more everything. But then also, and again, I think the characters they just seem to be polarizing. Some people really liked the characters in this game, and again, some people just found them like completely dull and
Mm.
uninteresting. And then speaking of characters, well, I did see this. This honestly is probably the most common negative criticism of characters is a lot of why are these NPCs? Like, why are they even here? These just random people scattered all over Prague. They're not doing anything. Like they're just sitting or standing there. And these are cut and paste. Like I can literally see like, oh look, it's Frank Hardy, and you gave him shaggy hair and glasses. It's Judge Danforth, and you gave
Oh
him,
yeah.
a beard. Um, Again, I think that's a fair criticism. Like, what really was accomplished by putting those NPCs everywhere? And I will say, I'm just gonna say this to you, Carter. Like, I feel like we need to talk at a later date. We got to have an episode about like, what makes a good immersive Nancy Drew game. Like, cause I think other games, I'm just saying that like I won't rabbit trail us, but I think Mystery of the Seven Keys kind of exposed like it's not necessarily about having you don't just need to put people everywhere. Like you can create ambiance and a sense of immersion and a place feeling full of people in other ways. Anyway,
Oh
like I saw,
yes.
yeah.
So much
Anyway,
to
we gotta
comment, but
not.
I'm trying to harbor it in because
Yeah,
yeah.
so much. But yes, that I saw so many jokes and wisecracks about the NPCs.
Yes.
Like
And
they
this
just like I think they just copy pasted every which
Yeah, and well, and that's what
where's the
comes with
lie?
having really large and expansive environments is you have
Yes.
to fill it in with something and it but it's like there's yeah, again, but yeah, we can get off into a whole thing about that. But
Yeah. Well, and you because you mentioned the environments, that actually was another criticism I saw that people
mhm,
felt like for all like because one of the things that Her Interactive has touted in when we switch to Unity, we can give you more environments. We can give you longer gate like everything's going to be just I feel like it's bigger and better. That's kind of
right,
the
right.
the tagline and people felt like, well, it feels empty
Mhm.
and lifeless. Like you put me in these big expansive spaces. I'm guessing probably the courtyards
Yes.
are the ones that create that biggest sense of like you stuck me in this big courtyard to run or walk around in and
Mhm.
it feels
Because in real life
empty.
it wouldn't be that
Yeah.
empty. There would be like people like everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's probably why maybe it feels that way.
Mhm.
But no, yeah,
That's not all.
that's not all. And this one is a huge one that I feel like is reoccurring again from it's like kind of coming over from Midnight in Salem is that Nancy's voice is not sounding the way people want it to sound. They
Mhm.
are saying that it sounds too robotic, too cold sounding, just not how they picture Nancy's voice to sound.
Yeah.
And this was some criticism that people had in Midnight in Salem, and they're still having
Yeah, we
it
talked
to
about that in
Mystery of the Seven
modern
Keys.
era.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
So that issue is continuing for a lot of
yes.
people. Then navigation kind of and just the movement mechanics. This is more so not really a free roam issue, but again, those people who like they don't want to play either can't or don't want to play a Nancy Drew game that's not point and click.
Mhm.
Um, Again, I think fairly so. A lot of criticisms that the point and click navigation felt clunky.
Mhm.
And I can definitely personally testify to that as someone who has played the game all the way through in both navigation modes. It gets frustrating
Yeah.
many times and it's not intuitive. So
Yeah.
again, and I think again that would certainly, if you're spending like your entire gameplay getting frustrated just trying to figure out like how do I even move around? Like how do I get from here to there? Like that's just going to constantly be taking you out of the story. And how can you
Absolutely.
even get immersed when those kind of things are getting in the way? And then this is a big one. Again, this is a criticism that has continued, and I understand why. Is once again the continued Midnight in Salem problem of people felt like this has none of the charm and the magic of the older Nancy Drew game. So still not there. And even I think those people again, I did see like a lot of negative reviewers. They were willing to acknowledge, like, yeah, it's better than Midnight in Salem, but still, like, it's just missing that that charm. Like, this is why I play Nancy Drew games, and it reminds me so much of when you talked in the personal era episode, even a feeling like that's when some of the magic was kind of starting to dissipate. Like that's what we want, and for the people who are missing it, like, yeah, Mystery of the Seven Keys, how could it be an enjoyable game to them if they don't feel like they're playing a Nancy Drew game? Because the magic's not there.
Sure.
So that's kind of what we have been seeing in terms of like positive versus negative. It's more just like all I would say for the negative people, it's sorry, negative. I don't want to call them negative people. That's the wrong thing. I'm not trying to say something about those people's personality. For the people who negatively reviewed the game, I would say it's more if you think favorably of Mystery of the Seven Keys, I actually find there's a lot of overlap kind of in those criticisms. Like I know people who like Mystery of the Seven Keys and they're equally critical of, say, Brittany Cox's voice or the
Sorry.
puzzles. Or the puzzles. But I think it's more kind of just where you're at, and this is each person's individual Nancy Drew journey. It's kind of like, are those flaws a game breaker for you, or is it something that kind of like, okay, yeah, that's definitely a flaw, needs to be better, but I can kind of look past that because I can see like it's getting better. Like there's kind of this optimism, like that they can find their way versus other people are just like, I just feel like I played Midnight in Salem 2.0. Like I can't keep doing Nancy Drew games this way, and I'm done. And again, I am not interested in saying like who's right or wrong. Your journey with the Nancy Drew games is your journey. Only you know what you want out of a Nancy Drew game, and so where you land and how open you are to this continued modernizing of Nancy Drew, like that's up to each of us to decide. So I just feel like in the reviews I'm just seeing more like just different kind of what people's orientation is towards, like, are they optimistic that Nancy Drew games can be good modernized, or are they kind of just like, nope, the ship has sailed and I can no longer be on it. Like that's kind of what I'm seeing. I don't know if you have seen same or something a little bit different.
No, actually, I mean, well, me just like, being silly, but there was also some seriousness to it, me responding by raising my hand. It's just, I think the same thing. I think that there is some commonality. There's a bridge from the positive and negative reviews that are connected together. Um, like we've said earlier, I mean, most people agree that, oh, this is better than Midnight in Salem. Even like when you were commenting and saying that in some of the negative reviews, like, yeah, it is better than Midnight in Salem, but Like, I think
But
everyone, right. I think everyone can agree on those things. I think it just, um, I think how willing some people are more able to accept certain qualities that are more important to one person or less important to
yes,
another. It's just different from player to player. Um, but I do agree. I'm in the camp that I actually am more in the camp of being like, I lean more towards, I had a more positive outcome from when I finished playing the game. Um, but also still have my critiques as well. So, um,
honestly, I
yeah,
mean, you've brought it up. I kind of feel like we should just go for it now.
sure. Why
Like,
not?
let's have the conversation.
Okay.
What did you think of Miss? Like, give me. You just made it. Give me your more like nitty gritty
Okay.
details of
Sure.
like, and then I'll share my thoughts as well.
Okay.
What did Carter think of Mystery of the Seven Keys?
Which, okay, just to also specify, I'm excited that I get to have this conversation with you today because I post playing Key did not post a review. I did not post a review yet. Maybe I should say that. Um, on Steam, on my YouTube channel, on
Okay.
Instagram. Like, never have I released my full-fledged all the thoughts, right? Like, this would be this conversation here. This is I guess my review.
This is the conversational review. Ooh, goody! I feel special.
Well, and also too because, during
I'm
that
so
time when
excited.
I talked about how there was like this hibernation period, I think in my soul, like deep down inside, I felt so I don't know what the right word is. Like, I guess so much of me came out just with that 1 year leading up to the release of Key and then
Oh,
playing it, that my hibernation period about Mystery of the Seven Keys in general just has long lasted. I think just because I've just needed time to just really soak and thinking about the game and piecing together how I really felt, just because my relation to the game surpasses just the fact that it released. My relation to the game comes all the way back to when April 1st happened and all the way back to when Charity found her thing. So I feel like my attachment to it is
yeah.
almost like greater than just a game was released. And so I think that's maybe why
Oh,
for me I was
yeah.
like, "Oh, I need my hands off of this for a second. I really need to just."
Well, and I just wanted to say, because I actually do
Yeah.
remember when you streamed Mystery of the Seven Keys, I do remember you made some sort of comment at the end of your final stream, kind of that it felt bigger than just a game to you because it
Yeah.
was wrapped up in so much like community bonding
Yes.
and think because of the marketing, which I
Yes.
like that was just very interesting to me, kind of hearing you share kind of almost like your immediate thoughts after you finished, that you had felt like you almost had like it was a larger than life experience because you were caught up not just in I just played the new Nancy Drew game, but also it was the culmination of over a year's worth
Oh yeah, because
of
and also for me, and I
exciting
know
experience. Yeah.
exactly, and I know that this will
That makes a lot of sense why you needed distance.
yes, and I know that this does affect maybe my feelings after playing it. Maybe that's why I lean more towards the positive camp, is because, you know, this game marked, I was able to partner with the company that made them. What? 6-year-old me that started the Nancy Drew games never would have thought I would have partnered with this gaming company in that kind of way. So I think there is some stronger relations that I have to this game and the people that I've met along the way and grown closer with. And so it's kind of difficult, I think, for me to just put a review out like after playing it immediately. I needed some time.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
anyways, yes, this is our first time getting to talk about it. Well, I'll tell you, my first initial thoughts when the game opened was I was like, yes. I was like, finally, this is not some sleek white menu bar modernization of Nancy Drew. This is art in it. This has more. This is not just a building that's a box. This is a building with arches and architecture and more fine details that can be appreciated. I was like, yes, that's a good game. That's what it should be. And I was excited to see those elements at the very start. I loved the title screen, that it had this big, beautiful animation with it, even had its own music. I was like, that's great. That's
That's
great.
right. Oh, that's
I
right.
mean,
There was mhm,
yeah, it had its own
unique
special
music
thing
just for the opening. Mhm.
just for the opening. And like, those are nice touches. I love when things add things just for the sake of things. Yeah, you can quote me on that. Oh, yeah.
Let's put
Um,
that on a t-shirt. I love when you add things just yeah.
but it's
Love it.
true. It's true. And I remember being engrossed in the very first like 30 minutes to an hour of it because I was just obsessed with all of that. I loved that they brought this letter again and that it was setting us up for what we were about to get into because I was like, yes, this is classic Nancy Drew. I really love that. And I even loved that they took it and they spun it and they made it more modern. I loved that as she's reading us this letter, we're seeing scenes of Prague like a movie. And I was okay with that because I was like, well, this is really cool. And I did feel like it was almost like a way of them kind of showing off, like, ooh, yeah, look what we animated. It's very nice. It's very beautiful. And I was okay with that because it was. And then when that postcard just like faded into the actual scene, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like butter to me. You could not have set that up better, because I think one thing that the Nancy Drew games experimented with at one point was how do we play around with our like intros into the game. I actually was thinking about this the other day because some of the games that did experiment with different ways to intro, I actually really attached to and I loved. Like I
Ooh.
love
Ooh, I'm almost tempted to tell you maybe you need to hold that thought so
I
we can talk about it in a future
well
episode.
we
Like
definitely
you
we
say what
def
you love about yeah.
well, no,
Mystery of the
we
Seven
definitely
Keys, but
will. I won't say too much now, but I was just thinking about like, I love how Legend of the Crystal Skull starts off with a warning, and I love how Phantom of Venice starts with like this flashback,
okay.
and I love how Nancy wakes up to a call and it's Savannah in the middle of the night. Like I love when the
Gotcha.
games do something different in the intro because I think that it's a hook and it should hook you. And so for
Mhm.
me, this game, the way that it started was like a hook into you're going to learn so much about Prague and you're going to get to explore all of these, sections of it. And it's really just setting you up. And so I loved it. As far as the animation and environments, I thought it was a huge step up from Midnight in Salem. And I remember commenting and saying that I liked that the characters moved more swiftly and more natural. It felt like I was talking to a real person instead of like this type of like roboticness to them. Um,
The constant hand gestures,
the
almost
people,
violent.
the T
Yes.
pose, the version with the T, which also we do have those NPCs though in Mysteries of Keys, but things just were
Yeah.
better in that sense.
Yeah.
I agree. I actually agree that some of the environments were a bit lifeless, particularly like the courtyard area. I think during the daytime maybe was a bit off, and I don't know if it's because like during the nighttime I thought the courtyard was better. During the daytime, I think I could see a little bit more of the
And now
imperfections
that you
of
say
it.
that, I think I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I think everything felt a little bit more like boxy and like there was not enough things. Like you could walk a very long distance and there'd be like nothing in between. Um,
Mhm.
at nighttime, I think it had those street lights that added a little bit more ambience and just because
And then
things
wasn't
were
there like I feel like
darker.
there was fog
Yeah, there was
sometimes
like
rolling through
fog
the
and
yeah.
and because it was
Yeah.
darker, maybe you didn't notice how much space was empty. You just were looking ahead at what you were trying to get to, so you didn't notice how much distance was there. So I think it actually worked
Sure.
better at night. I did love that they brought the day and night sequence back. We've been aiding for that for so long. Like, please put that back in the game where we can just switch and go back and forth, and it was great. Um, some environments felt better than others. Like I thought the cafe was nice. It felt like it had many little things to interact with, and it did feel cozy. Um, I did like, and I'm blanking on his name because it's been so long since I've gotten to, but the priest,
Eh, eh.
one of my favorite characters,
Leo.
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 Yes, his office. I enjoyed his office. I thought it was a very fun thing to kind of like snoop through and I thought that was a fun space. It's just those bigger areas maybe felt a bit empty.
Yeah. Okay.
So
That makes sense.
I don't know, but no. Okay, so tell me what you thought of just that, those same things, like just the beginning, opening the game. Like where were you at? What did you do?
Yeah, so the opening, I definitely remember being immediately intrigued, and I actually think we I'm trying to remember. I think we may have mentioned this in the modern era episode or something. I remember being immediately like, yes, the letter was cool, but I actually remember being immediately like caught off guard in the best kind of way when Nancy walks into the cafe and
Mm,
Patrizia is sitting at the table, and then Adela, who we don't know who's who yet.
yeah.
I actually remember my intrigue was actually past the official letter opening, and I do remember the cinematics. Like I appreciate kind of that more, a little bit more of a cinematic opening, and I loved the menu screen. Like, sorry, now I feel like I'm going backwards,
No,
like
no,
trying
that's
to
fine.
comment on all things. Yeah, I did definitely appreciated that the menu screen looked so much more polished and like
Mm-hmm.
some thought
Colorful.
and care went into it. But yeah, what I remember specifically is yes, that cutscene, Nancy. Because first of all, just the movement, I was like, whoa, this feels really, this is good graphics. Like this looks really cool.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know a Nancy Drew game could pull this off. And then that whole choice of actually where they did the little bit of like, you don't even know who you're talking to, and then suddenly they put you right in this like immediate detective situation. Like, are you even talking to the real Adela?
Oh yeah,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
I was so completely unprepared for it in like, I feel like the best kind of way. Like, whoa. Cuz that was an opening, again, it was an opening that's never quite been tried before. So I definitely was captivated by the opening, and I think starting in the cafe was a great choice because the cafe was something that they had teased to us several times. So we
Yes.
already had a certain familiarity and attachment to it of wanting to
Mm-hmm.
see that space.
Definitely
But then
purposeful.
also, I think the cafe is definitely one of the most warm and inviting and cozy environments in the game.
Oh yeah.
And I actually remember, I don't know if you remember this, Carter. You sadly you had to work on release day,
Yes.
but we kind of made this agreement of almost like you're like, Tori, I just, like, don't spoil, of course, but like I just have to know. Like, what do you think? I know you're playing. I remember you messaged me like, I just need to know. Like, what are your thoughts? It's you're playing the game right now. And so I remember telling you, I was like, Carter, I've been playing this game for 2 hours and I'm still in the cafe because I'm so engrossed in just
Yeah. Oh, I freaked out at that.
inspecting everything. I was like,
Yeah.
well, of course, first of all, don't stick a bookworm in a library because that cafe is also partially a library. So of course I'm like, I'm not going anywhere until I look at every title on this shelf. So um I was absolutely drawn in by the opening, and I guess I hadn't maybe thought too much about whether the environments felt lifeless and empty to me, but it's kind of more like in hindsight, once other people drew attention to it, I'm like, oh yeah, actually, I think I kind of did have this like internal sense of maybe something felt a little bit off
Yeah.
and like something was missing. Um, and yeah, the NPCs, like, nah, you don't. Maybe they should work on some other ways. I would like more ambient noise. Like
Yeah.
Phantom of Venice is my one of my gold standards for making a place feel populated and you don't have to stick a single person anywhere.
So true.
Being able to hear the conversations
Mm-hmm.
and hear the outdoors sounds, hear the pigeons, like,
And what?
yeah.
Okay, just like let's
Um
imagine that though. Imagine that there were people speaking in their first language just in the background, and we don't see them. But wow, that would have added. That would have
It
added.
really would, yeah. Yeah, and then other environments, yeah, there were certain ones like I that I really kind of, yeah, felt either more or less excited about. I actually really appreciated. I loved the whole like splitting operat kind of into
Uh,
two. I liked the very clear like visual. You go into this like almost blindingly like a very fluorescent lit space that almost makes you want to like turn like I gotta get out of
Sterile.
here. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna go blind. Yeah. And then and it did help that the music's doing one thing and then you immediately cross over into Merrick's half
Hmm.
and suddenly it's like there's wood and all these earthy colors. It's much more like dark lit. Remember that was a space that
Which feels
really
very
really caught
purposeful.
yeah, really caught my definitely really caught my attention. So yes. What about navigation?
Yeah, I actually
How'd you feel about
decided.
that?
Well, I
Because this
decided.
went in a direction for me, I was not expecting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I decided when I opened the game that because, since I played the game after people had already kind of been into it, I already had heard buzz that the point and click was not it. And so I just didn't even try. I just wanted to just be able to play a smooth run through and not have to kind of feel frustrated by anything. I just wanted to just absorb it without having anything overhanging on my space. And so I was like, okay, well, because I remember when I opened the game, people in the chat were already like, "Don't do the point and click. Just don't do it." Like people were already telling me. So I was like, okay, okay. Well, I trust y'all because y'all have already started the game, so I'm gonna play it in this. What's it called? Open. I don't know even know free roam, free something.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
they call it classic and modern, and then yes. So it's either point and click or free roam
okay,
navigation.
and then I did the
Yes.
free roam, and because I've been now streaming for over 2 years now, I've gotten more used to free roam, I think. And so I just took it like that. I was like, I'm not going to think of this as like a point and click Nancy Drew game. I'm just not going to think of that. I'm just going to just play the game in
You're
free
just
roam.
gonna uh pour espresso into Nancy and have her sprint around the cafe like a
And that
maniac.
was the best
That's what I
part.
remember about your experience.
That was the best part. Oh my gosh. Like and how needed was that when you got to the courtyard and you had to run a mile and a half to get to places? The fact that you could
Yeah.
run was the best thing ever. They so should have that always.
Yes. Navigation was one of the biggest surprises to me. My experience, it was not what I was expecting. It kind of defied expectations, I feel like, in every way. Because I had made the commitment to myself. I was like, I'm gonna play the game in point and click mode the first time through.
Okay.
Like if they're offering me classic Nancy, that's what I'm gonna do. But it did immediately from the get go. I was like, "Ooh, this is a little bit clunky and confusing because you don't have those clear like hotspots at 90-degree angles." And I would click, and suddenly I'd be standing somewhere I wasn't expecting to be standing there. But I did. I stuck it out. I played the game all the way through on point and click, and like I didn't hate it, but I was like, oh, that was a little bit. It wasn't as magical as I was hoping. I think
Mm.
I was hoping somehow that having Mystery of the Seven Keys be point and click, that somehow some of that old time magic would come back, but it was just a little bit too unpolished.
Do you think if you had originally played the game in free roam that maybe that would have, I don't know, helped your first experience playing the game? Like it wouldn't have felt so like maybe
Well, I
frustrating
will
because
say,
you were
I will. Well,
expecting
I will
the.
say, yeah. I will say, like, I don't feel like my immersion and enjoyment was like killed by point and click being a little. It was more to me. It's just like, okay, this is a little bit clunky, but I was kind of
Mm,
expecting that because, again, this is only their second Unity game,
sure.
and also like Midnight in Salem's navigation is so frustrating. I'm like, well, it's still better than that. So what do I have to be? What do I have to be mad about?
Sure.
So, but for me, what came as the shocker, I was like, well, you know what? Let me just try it. Let me just try free roam the second time through and see what happens. Now in my case, there was some genuine concern of like, I've had a history of those kind of things can cause motion sickness. So for me, I was like, I genuinely don't know if this is even going to be possible.
Yeah.
But I was able to play it the whole way through in free roam, and I was so pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh my goodness, you know what? If Nancy can sprint everywhere for the rest of her life, I am here for it. And I actually discovered some areas that I didn't realize I could really snoop that closely in point and click because I didn't know where the hotspot was. And then suddenly in free roam, I was
Ooh.
like, oh, like I didn't realize you could get behind the dean secretary's desk
Oh
in
yeah.
point and click. I completely missed that and then discovered and was able to get back there in free roam. Oh, and I was able to inspect all the book titles even more closely because I could like stand like, shove my face into the shelf and just study them
That's the
better.
great thing about free roam.
So I was pleasantly surprised, and that was one thing I'm like, you know what? Um, I mean, I don't want them to toss point and click because I would hate for them to cut out that subset of people who, like, for motion sickness reasons, cannot handle first person, free roam. But I'm like, I'm okay with that's a change I'm okay with. I really enjoyed playing a Nancy Drew game with that kind of navigation. Um, so
Yeah,
it
and
worked.
and
It
I
worked for
think
me.
it was really cool that they were able to advertise that as the first Nancy Drew game to have dual navigation, even though it wasn't flawless, but it was better than their previous game, and maybe they'll be able to improve on it more to make the
Yeah.
point and click, more appealable to those that like that. So, that I think they could.
Yeah. How about I'm curious to know kind of what did you think about like the characters? And I
Oh
think we
yeah.
could also put voice acting, not just for Nancy, but like voice acting in general,
The
like
voice
characters,
acting,
phone contacts, voice acting, like all that.
well, the voice acting blew me away. I was actually really really impressed. I think the open narration of Prague was done by this, wasn't it also the same person that voiced Merrick? Is that right?
I think you're thinking of the trailer.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Merrick did the trailer voiceover, but
But
that I remember
Nancy
that
talks
that
in the
that,
beginning,
that
right?
like cinematic opening at the beginning. I actually think to me it sounded like Patrizia was
Okay, is that what it was?
doing the
I
narration.
genuinely couldn't remember who did the narration, but that's right. You're right. Merrick does the trailer, but I think that's where it started for me. Is like watching the trailer and hearing that voiceover. I was like, wow, this is like some top notch level voice acting.
Yeah.
And then we played the game, and I felt that way about every time we would meet a character. I'd be like, wow, I really love how like their voices, like they are really like they're
Well,
good.
you loved everyone until you met Vladena, and then she insulted you,
Well,
and you blacklisted her.
she's on my list. She's on my list, as
You ran over to the museum.
Miss
Like
Ungermeyer from Lizzie McGuire
I can't
movie would
even
say.
deal with this woman right now. She's so
Yeah,
annoying.
I did, and I still feel that way.
But I guess actually maybe that's to her credit that, she pulled with the way the line was delivered and stuff,
Oh yeah,
made you immediately feel so insulted you had to go into the other room. So I
literally.
guess
No,
they pulled it
yes,
off.
no. I genuinely thought all of the voice acting was interesting and not just like great. I feel like they specifically were on the look for people that could knock it out of the park because Radek's voice actor, Merrick's voice actor, uh, Patricia, I like all of
Leo,
the Leo, yes, like everybody had such warmth to their voice and interesting like grain and quality. Like I loved the voice acting except for one. And I still feel this way after playing Midnight in Salem and now Mystery Seven Keys, and I'm like, Brittany, it's just the voice of Nancy just needs more work, I feel like. And and I just I don't know. I honestly don't even know. I don't know what to say about that other than it's not there yet. It's not there yet. I actually was having this conversation. Someone just reached out to me actually this past week, and we were discussing things of this game, and this topic came up, and I was just commenting and saying, yeah, and people feel very split on this, and I think you and I have talked about this as well, about Lonnie not sounding like an 18-year-old. And that is actually something that for me never really crossed my mind because her voice was perfect as Nancy. So the age thing just never really like penetrated into my
Brought a
mind.
uniqueness to it for
Right.
sure.
Like
That
it,
just overcomes any kind of
yeah. And because her,
lack of realism.
yeah, yeah. And I guess because I just didn't think about it and I was thinking like I am Nancy, like it just, the age just never really occurred to me because Lonnie brought some sort of warmth, quirkiness, and delivery that was just what I would expect Nancy to sound like. And I do agree with the criticism that Brittany's voice makes Nancy sound too cold and too robotic. Like the way that she emphasizes certain words in a line, I'm like, oh, but that just wasn't how it was supposed to come out, I don't think, you know? Um, I, I don't know. Like the way Lonnie did it was just a more playful a play. She just had this like playfulness to her. Like I can hear Brittany in my head in the way she says, "First case I've solved in Prague," and that's how she says it. And I just know that Lonnie would approach it in just a more warmer way, and she'd be like, "I've never been to Prague before." Like she would just. You know, it would just be a playful kind of quirkiness to Nancy, where I just feel like this one is just not. So I don't know where that comes into play because I don't know the behind the scenes of how the voice acting stuff works, which we did get to see some kind of videos that they are in a studio and they are in the same studio because Radek was in the same video shots that Britney was in when they were promoting Key and the release of Key. And I want to say somewhere I watched a video or read that maybe Britney was actually helping the coaching a little bit. I could be wrong on that,
Oh, okay.
but
I remember.
I don't know. But I just do wish that she would maybe just change up some of those lines just a little bit. That's just how I felt about it. I don't know where you sit in what camp when it comes to Nancy's voice.
Um, I will come back to that in a moment because I also wanted to ask, like, what did you think of phone characters in this game, both in terms of when you could call them versus text messages and having some of those returners like Carson, Ned, a little bit of Frank and Joe? Like, what do you think about all that?
I mean, it was great to have I guess that a little bit of that familiarity. You know, I do think one of the things that are lacking a little bit in the newer games is we need some really quirky, wacky phone characters that are truly funny. And I know that they have like the which I'm like foggy on it. Isn't there a character that we talked to on the phone through the jewel shining?
Hans Firesinger? Is that
Yeah.
who you're thinking of? Yeah, the Second Shine, the guy who runs
Yes.
Second Shine.
Second
Yes.
shine.
You call him like towards the very beginning of the game. Yes.
Right. And I don't know if that was supposed to be kind of like our phone character, you know, but I do think that they maybe could pour a little bit more into having like a phone character that's like I need some Tink, I need some Casey Porterfield, I need some Vivian Whitmore.
Hilda
Like
Swenson.
yeah, like I just need a phone character that just knocks my socks off, you know?
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
I do you know, I guess because we're in more of the more modern era of Nancy Drew, we're supposed to use the phone to like call a lot, but I do remember finding it frustrating. I would try and call and I would never get an answer from people. I felt like I don't know, maybe that was the triggering of the game that I was experiencing. Maybe I just wasn't at a certain scene yet. I'd be like calling people and I couldn't seem to.
And they also did shift a lot of things into text messages,
Yes.
which in one sense, like, it's more real. Yeah, it's more realistic for Nancy to send texts instead of actually calling someone. But then also, it saves on voice acting work if you don't have to get all those lines recorded. So yeah.
Right.
Um. So my thoughts on characters. I guess I'll go since you asked me. I'll go back to Brittany specifically. Yeah, I felt, I would say, underwhelmed by her performance, and this actually was more than once, sadly, and broke the immersion for me. I had
Yes. That's a
multiple
good way of
multiple
saying it.
moments where I was like, "Why do I feel like I can tell you're standing in a recording booth reading lines into a microphone right now? Like, why do
Yeah.
I feel like I can tell that's what she's doing?" Like, yes, it did not, it, to me, there were a lot of line deliveries from her that did not at all feel natural. I didn't feel like she was actually talking to someone. I felt like she was reading a script and she was trying her absolute darndest to have perfect enunciation and to be very clear. I was like, well, maybe that's not the goal here. The goal is to sound lifelike and
Yes.
to sound like Nancy Drew. And I wasn't getting that. So that was definitely hard for me. But there were other voice acted characters who I just thought, oh my goodness, yes, you have the magic. Like, yes, Merrick, and maybe it is because they had him do the trailer voiceover, so he was like the first voice
Oh
really
yeah.
that that we got to hear in the game. I absolutely loved him, and I thought Radix guy did a particularly great job, and also Leo.
I
They
just
were
love
kind of
it.
like I would say probably they were my three that I loved the most. But yeah, in general, I would say for the most part, I enjoyed, like, yes, the suspects more than Nancy, which is sad.
Same.
Again, I did struggle, and I talked about this a lot more so in the modern era episode, so I won't just rehash my points. I struggled a bit hearing Ned and Frank and Joe because something still, I was like, I don't feel like it's really them. And I don't know if that's a coaching issue or if it's just because they all are all older. And so their voices have changed. And so it's just not possible for them to kind of tap into some of that earlier game vocal magic. Like I don't know. I was like the newer people who I'd never met before. It was easier to get on board with them than the reoccurring people. And I will say with phone conversations specifically, I definitely am in the camp of people who I just miss not just having like a kind of larger than life, really quirky, memorable phone character, like absolutely, but I just miss, and this is more of a writing issue, but it fits here as well as anywhere else. Um, I just want to call someone and talk to them about the mystery. Why can't I
Oh
do
yeah.
that?
Oh yes.
That's more of a world building issue though. That I felt
Agree.
like I was like I'm not allowed to call this person unless the story needs me to.
Yeah, and that's what I
Whereas
was saying. That's what I was saying is
yes,
I feel like I would
wh-
call people and it wasn't like I wasn't
yeah, it
calling
wasn't the
them.
right
It
yes, it
wasn't the
wasn't the
right
right time
time.
to
And
talk to them,
so
so you can't.
exactly. So the triggers there were kind of weird and I did also miss being able to just kind of info dump to someone else and then they respond with what their thoughts and opinions were on what I was info dumping to them about.
Yes, and also, or even I think of some of the games where they might have their own storyline going on. Yeah, like tell me about your life. I'm solving a mystery, but what are you up to? So
Exactly.
I really would like them to get, and I understand. I don't know if it was like a reaction to. I don't know if it was a reaction to, like, because Midnight in Salem got so slammed for having too much dialogue. I don't know if it's just they were trying to be super careful to not overload it, and so they
Yeah.
swung too far the other way.
Yeah.
But I would really like, please let us just talk to people for the sake of talking to them. If we want to update
Hmm.
them on the mystery, and I would be okay with, like, no, we're gonna pick up the phone and we're gonna make the call. We're not gonna have text message exchanges because that's not as immersive.
But
It's more
also,
realistic,
I
but it's
come
not as
back to the
immersive.
fact that I think Nancy's always going to be a little bit more old school. And
Yeah,
so I think she would be
absolutely.
like, "No, I need to pick up the phone and
I
I
want
need
to
to
call.
hear, yeah, I want to call."
Yeah.
She's not a texter.
Yes.
Nancy's not a texter.
Yeah. Now, I will also say Mystery of the Seven Keys actually was a very, and I'm so curious. I want to know your thoughts on this. Cuz Mystery of the Seven Keys helped me solidify kind of how I feel about one particular thing. So you remember how basically again, bigger is better. They touted to us, if we switch to Unity, we can have more characters, more
Oh,
environments,
yeah.
more gameplay. You know what Mystery of the Seven Keys solidified for me? Anne Collins Ludwig
Yep.
was right when she said, I think the ideal game has 4 suspects.
Yep.
This game, I think, had
8.
9, something like that. And I have concluded that's too much.
Yeah, it's like 8 or 9.
I felt like everyone, because there were so many people, that everyone was kind of getting shortchanged. And I felt like I don't really know these people in the way that I maybe can feel like I have gotten to know characters from earlier games. Like, let me tell you, and I know you feel the same way. Leo.
I know.
Leo had the absolute, I feel like, most potential to be one of those memorable Nancy Drew characters that we all
Absolutely. I
talk
loved him
about
so much.
and that we all adore to pieces. He's hardly in the game.
Yep.
I hate that. I
Yep.
was like, you had a gold mine in that man.
Mm-hmm.
And he's probably the one that you talk to, I feel like, the least. Maybe him or Zane.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. And Merrick, again, I felt like Merrick didn't get enough screen time. I didn't get to know him as much as I want to. I kind of
All the
feel like
ones that needed more screen time
I
didn't.
almost feel like they threw all their eggs in the basket of Elka
Yeah.
for reasons.
Right.
But there were others. I'm just like, I feel like I hardly got to know that person, and it makes me sad. So then I was trying to figure out, why do I feel this way? And I just think I've just concluded. I was like, bigger is not necessarily better.
Mm-hmm.
I would prefer, let's scale it back a little bit. Give me
Yep.
fewer suspects, because then you can put more into really like fleshing them out and making sure that we get to interact with them.
Yep.
I think Oscar had the potential again to be kind of one of those memorable like jerks in the series. Like we always every so often get someone who's just a real pain in the butt.
Tino.
And or yeah. But I just, yeah, that's kind of what I felt. I felt like, and even like, I'm thinking specifically of Patrizia. Yeah, I feel like is one that you get to talk to more
Mm-hmm.
than some of the others. But like all that stuff in her recipe book about like she quit school, but she also seems to want to travel. Like, why don't we really get to talk to her about any of that?
Oh, I know.
Like, so that's actually, this was a very illuminating game for me in that sense. I was just like,
Okay.
I was like, no, I would rather, maybe they don't have to go all the way back to 4, but it's too many. And I was trying to figure out, why do I feel like I have a better sense of the people in Midnight in Salem, but I think part of this Midnight in Salem, like 3 of its characters are returning. Frank, Joe, Deirdre. So we already know, so we don't need to devote time to fleshing them out. We kind of
Sure.
already have a sense of who they are. And so they actually had, I feel like, fewer that they needed to work with in Midnight
Yeah.
in Salem. Whereas Mystery of the Seven Keys, like, almost like basically everybody is new.
That's true. No, and
what I thought.
actually, that's funny that you mentioned that, because I felt the same way when we were talking about that episode in the Golden Era, when we were talking about Anne, and in that Nickelodeon magazine, that's where she's sharing that she feels like 3 to 4 suspects is best. And she would know because she writes mysteries for
I was
TV.
like, of course, she's the
Yeah,
queen.
she
I
would
trust
know.
her. She tells me my Nancy Drew game needs 4 suspects. Amen.
Yeah, no.
Preach it.
But it's true, because I think like of Ghost Dogs, because that's actually the interview that they were interviewing her for in that magazine, was about Ghost Dogs. And I think of that game and I'm
They're
like,
so distinct.
they're so distinct.
Also,
Like
so
each character
distinct.
is its own, and you really do have enough suspicion on each person, and each person throws suspicion on each other one. Whereas in like Mystery of Seven Keys, there are so many characters and so many suspects that trying to get into who they are and who's how does this one know that one, it gets a little muddy at that point because there is so much.
And then I think this is a good time to bring this in, and maybe we can use this more as to get into kind of like the writing and maybe what we thought of the story and stuff, but specifically dialogue. I don't know what you thought about. Like, I definitely appreciated that it has a lot less dialogue than Midnight in Salem.
Oh yeah,
Like,
for sure.
kudos. Thank you. Midnight in Salem has way too much. So thank you for paring it down. But this is another thing. And again, I feel like this is a world building thing and a replayability factor thing that Mystery of the Seven Keys has very few dialogue trees. You know, where you have this, like you're having a conversation with someone and you have two options. And if you pick one, you're gonna miss out on a response because you didn't choose the other one. So the only way to get around that is then just means you gotta replay the game and choose different conversations next time, and you're gonna get a little bit of a different experience. I noticed Mystery of the Seven Keys, for the most part, other than the very beginning. Remember how we talked about the intro, like, you know, when Nancy has to suss out, like, am I talking to the real Adela or not?
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only time where you get a choice, because you get to choose between, like, do I want to say that the Ryukon Hiei was scarier or Thornton Hall was scarier? And you also get to pick, like, how you know which person is Adela. And then after that, the conversations just become like, you are always going to have, and I know this because I've played the game 4 times, Carter, so I can verify you have the same conversations with people. It always goes the same way every time. Like, you have to say this thing to them, ask them this question. They're going to respond to you in such and such way. You go through all the options until you've exhausted them. And then you get to the very end, and then you finally get another choice when you get to decide, am I going to call Ned and tell him about the case? Or am I going to call my dad, Carson, and tell him about the case? So I was sorely missing that sense of, like, I feel like I have some choice here and it's going to change my experience a little bit. It's like they tried to do the bare minimum of dialogue writing or something.
And
And I was missing that.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that because I was also thinking of that, you know, when you asked me when did the series change for me? And we briefly talked about that the dialogue and the writing also started changing at this time. And I actually feel that a lot of the more standard dialogue tree options that we had in the earlier games started to kind of dissipate then and became more of like, you have 7 questions you need to ask. Just pick a question, get an info dump from a suspect, and then you just pick the next question. And and then I realized that after we filmed that episode, I was like, oh, that's a huge part of what I think started to feel like it was changing for me, is that all those games in that era start to kind of get into this info dump, question, and it starts to feel less like a conversation. And you're right, Mystery of Seven Keys does the same thing, where instead of having these 2 options where Nancy comes up and asks something and then the suspect will give a little bit of detail and then she can either further follow up to get more info or start something else with like ask a different question. We just miss that, and it's just you must select all the dialogue. It's the only way you can move forward in the game. You will have to sit through all of it, and you
Yep.
better be paying attention because somewhere in the 7 paragraphs that we've written for you, there's one little tiny piece that you're going to need that will help you move forward and solve. And that I am not a fan of. So I am so glad you brought that up because I did just realize that when we were filming those episodes not too long ago.
What do you think of the story?
I loved
Did you feel
okay.
like
Well,
did you feel like you could follow it?
I liked it better than Midnight in Salem. I could follow it a little bit better, but I don't think that I had the full sense of completion like I was talking about a couple weeks back that I used to have with Nancy Drew games, where I
Mm.
think I understood the big picture. I was missing some big picture stuff, and I do actually think that the writing and dialogue tree does affect that, because I remember when, a few months down the road after Mystery of Seven Keys had released, fans were coming out with videos like, you may, like, I know Goob and Jetpack had to commit, you may have missed this really important conversation with this character, and this is how you unlock it. And I'm like, because I feel like we shouldn't miss really important conversations. Like it's we've had in the past with Nancy Drew games where there may have been like a rare dialogue option that's hard to unlock, but I feel like with Mystery of the Seven Keys, like the effect of, you know, having to go through the conversation that way and not being able to fully get this picture of what's happening, it really affects how you,
Yeah.
yeah, how you, like, at the end result, like how you're going to take everything away. If you're having to go through so much dialogue and you're just clicking and you're just kind of just trying to get through it, you are missing information there because you're not listening, you're just like going through it. um
Yeah. And I do think Mystery of the Seven Keys is a longer game than the personal era games. I'd actually be curious to know what's the breakdown of dialogue between those games. But
sure.
I wonder if you're thinking of I think you're thinking of, you can't find out who owns the necklace.
Yeah.
Like the first time you play the game. Apparently, that's a thing that people unlocked on replays.
Right, right.
And my understanding is people are still trying to. I don't think anyone has figured out the specific triggers yet. Other than there's a lot of theories floating around that it seems to be tied to achievement hunting. It's almost like they made it
Oh,
like it's a hidden ending, and if you go achievement hunting and you get XYZ achievements, you can unlock it.
interesting.
I do feel like that's probably a little bit of a mistake, because like in one sense that does help replayability, because you're like, well, I gotta figure out how to trigger this ending, so it makes you
Sure.
want to replay the game. But it does leave you with this sense of, because there's the whole deal of like Adela brings Nancy in for the necklace, and
Yeah.
then they kind of talk a little bit about like who owned it, and so to kind of just leave that as a gaping plot hole at the end, and only the people who unlock the second ending are going to get to experience it. Like, yeah, um, probably not the choice I would make, to have something that's actually kind of a big part of the story get
Yeah.
shifted off into like only some people are gonna do all the things you have to do to unlock the ending.
Yeah, the
Um,
other stuff in old past Nancy Drew games that I feel like are rare to unlock are really just to make a suspect
Purely
more,
optional.
yeah,
Yeah,
like they
yeah,
look like,
yeah. It's just a little. Yes,
and so it did,
it's
it
not a
did
big
a,
story.
right, it's not a
You're
big
so
story
right.
thing. And I just feel like, and I don't know, I guess if that was intentional, I agree. I think it is a mistake, because I think that's part of what I was missing as far as big picture when I finished the game, what I'm supposed to understand. I'm like, wait a minute, I totally forgot that we were here for the necklace and we didn't even learn anything about that whole story. Like we probably should. That's probably an important part of
Yeah.
of figuring the, like, you shouldn't have the big things of the plot be missing. So,
Yeah. I will say I did enjoy the story as
mm-hmm.
well. Um there are some things that I'm still fuzzy about, and more so how and I won't spoil. I'm fuzzy on, I will just say in general, there's kind of, this game basically has two big culprits. I won't say who they are cuz I don't want to spoil
It's a
it,
fairly
but
new game, so
I'm still fuzzy on who exactly was driving the ship, because the game kind of talks out of both sides of its mouth in terms of like who needed who, and so that part's confusing to me. I will say I felt like I had to play the game multiple times to really wrap my mind around the whole story. But again, that goes with the whole, they're trying to make longer games. So I think that's more just like, that's probably going to be a common issue in the modern era, that
yeah.
I feel like it's just going to be harder to feel like it all made sense the first time through.
Yeah.
But I was very excited on replays in particular. One of the culprits in particular, I thought the little clues that they wove in to say it's that person.
We're
There's
seamless.
they were, I thought, really well done. Little breadcrumbs laid.
If there's one thing about you that I know, it's that you love breadcrumbs.
Yes, maybe I'm the pigeon here, not you. Give me all the breadcrumbs. And however, and again, this is another thing I'm excited that we can talk about this together because I want to know your thoughts about this. Um, and this is more a matter of like the tone of the series. Um, this game felt kind of more like its tone felt more serious and grown up. And I actually will say I think Midnight in Salem feels very similar. And I will also say I think the personal era got that shift going. And we need to talk about that in our storylines episodes
Yes.
coming up.
And we did actually mention
But
a little bit of that in the personal era
but
episode.
this just felt very like a character gets kidnapped in this game. And it actually feels quite serious, quite high stakes. And also Nancy gets poisoned. Hopefully I'm not really spoiling anything, but like Nancy gets poisoned in this game and has to make herself an antidote while she is actively dying. That's pretty intense. Like I remember I'm like, is this really happening right now? Like I am trying to save myself from dying because I just got poisoned. Like that felt really serious. And um there's a chase sequence in some scary tunnels. That actually felt like that. I have to brace myself before initiating that sequence because of kind of how intense it feels to feel like I am literally getting like chased down by someone. So the tone, I don't know, the tone to me, and even just I feel like the nature of the mystery, like Prague's crown jewels, someone's trying to steal. Like this is a big deal. A world capital's jewels, like someone's trying to steal them. Like it felt very grown up to me.
Yeah.
And I also felt, and this is another thing that I feel like I am missing. I don't know if it's possible to get this back. This game didn't feel funny. Like it was missing. You know how I feel like
Yes.
of the older games,
That's why I was saying about the phone characters.
we were looking for a certain humor and
Yes.
wackiness.
Comedic relief.
And this, yes, comedic relief. This game very rarely, I feel
Thank
like,
you.
feels funny.
Thank you. Thank you. Because, yes.
It repeatedly feels, and this is what I was just saying, it feels very serious,
Yes.
very grown up. Like Nancy Drew is not a teen detective. Like this feels very much to me like professional detective going out and solving a serious case.
Yes. Which really saddens me because which is, we all grow up, yes. But I love the campiness of the Nancy Drew games. I think they're so fun. And
Me too.
even when things are serious, like Maya gets kidnapped, there's still some like funniness to it. Like it's funny to experience sassy Nancy even when things are serious. And you do have a really funny phone character to call that does make you laugh when you're on the phone with them. And I think that takes that, and that's really what I was kind of getting at when I was talking about the phone characters, is that it's missing that charm. That is charming when you have like a nice, like distressed,
Yes.
like comedic relief to take you back down a little bit, and then you get back up when something happens, and then they bring you back down. And I just feel like you're right. It has a tone that stays pretty consistent the entire time you play.
Okay, and I feel like two more. Okay, I'm not sure how much we want to say on this topic.
Right.
I feel like I want to say very little on
I
it
can say
because
my very general, because I know what you're about to
because
say. I know we have an episode planned.
okay,
So
read my mind. What do I?
music.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much I feel obligated to say something, especially because
Well, just say
hey,
your general.
my friend E Mullins, if you're listening, because I know she's trying to get these opinions out of me in the public sphere. And I told her, I like basically promised I will say something
Yes.
about it soon.
Well,
Yeah.
say I
Okay,
would say
music.
just give us your like your general consensus of like what isn't working for you with the music just overall.
Okay. My general, well, let me just make my general statement. So far, the Ryan Ricks era is not going well for me. And it's a combination of his style. He has a minimalist kind of style, which means he loves to repeat little motifs over and over and over again. That's not working too well for me, especially considering who came before him, in particular my goat Kevin Manthe, and the looping. We're back to looping music, and it is just too much for me. I remember how I told you I spent 2 hours in the cafe when I first played Mystery of the Seven Keys. Well, as much fun as I was having looking at those books, I was not having fun hearing the same like 2.5 minute track looping over and over and over again. And yeah, I I promise I will elaborate more at a future date because we have music deep dives planned to just kind of articulate. But there's a lot of, yes, the repetition both of the music itself and the fact that we have looping music in environments. I'm not a fan. I'm not happy with where that is the single biggest gripe that I have with the current era of Nancy Drew games. The music is no good.
You know what?
In my onion,
I
it
commit
is
I
too
commit
much.
I commend you because I could really tell you were trying to hold back there, and I think you gave us just enough to know where you're at. So I
Okay,
commend you. I
thank you.
no,
I'm gonna trust you and say no more than that because I genuinely, what if I open this door, Carter, it's gonna come out.
well, don't worry because
And
we are opening
we
that
already
door in an
know this.
episode.
We already know this is going to be a long episode. So I
But
don't dare.
I
I will
agree.
say more.
I do agree with you.
But yes, what do you think? It's not just about
Do.
me.
No, but I do agree with you. I think that you're right in the assessment of Ryan Ricks's style, and that he is more minimalist because I feel like his tracks tend to be more synth and sound based rather than music. And this is coming from someone like I don't claim to be a music expert at all. Tori would know much more about music
Even I don't
as
know that much though.
well,
But
she would know much more though. And I'm just saying like based on what I've heard in Midnight in Salem and Mystery of Seven Keys, I just feel like I hear less music, more sound. That's what I would say when I hear his stuff. However, I do feel like I did like his stuff in this game better than Midnight in
oh,
Salem.
thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I went straight to my unhappiness with the Ryan Ricks era and forgot to mention. Yes, it is better than Midnight in Salem, but okay, fine. I'm just gonna say this one thing: Midnight in Salem is the worst soundtrack in the series. It is such a low bar. He didn't have to work very hard to cross it. So me saying it's better than Midnight in Salem is not me saying much at all. Are you happy, people? Okay,
Well,
Emolins, I hope that makes you happy. There. I love you.
I do really feel like it was better. I actually
Yes, it
hearing
is better.
hearing the marketing people say like I remember them specifying like what games they gave to say like, hey, this is what we want to model after. I remember they said Curse of Blackmore Manor, Treasure in Royal Tower, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember what else, but I know those two games for sure. Or maybe Warnings at Waverly Academy was the other. And
That makes sense.
they gave them that inspiration, and I can take some of those tracks and I can pick you out very specific parts where I'm like, this section of 5 to 10 seconds right here does model or sound like in an attempt to have like this Treasure in the Royal
Attempt.
Tower esque to it.
Yes.
But and so and in that way, I do think it was better. But I agree that it is, again, that's the best thing I feel like I can word up, is just that I feel like I hear more sound than I do music. That's the best thing that I could probably say. Yeah.
We need to revisit that.
We will. And also, one
Mm-hmm.
thing too, I will
That's a good
say,
point.
is because we have mentioned this earlier about Mystery of the Seven Keys, about making an environment feel full without having to do unnecessary additions. Like, they didn't have to have all the NPCs in the background. Just having the people talking in the background was very immersive in things like Phantom of Venice, or even Danger on Deception Island when you're in the empty cafe. Nobody else is there but Holt and Jenna, but you can hear there's a whole party going on, and in your mind and in your exploration, you feel like, and even Nancy comments on it, oh, I wish I could go inside, wish I could, looks like, sounds like they're having a lot of fun. Every time you click the sign, there's a different dialogue. And that same thing with the music, right? In a lot of the Nancy Drew games, the music would die down for a second, and you could just kind of absorb yourself in the ambience of the environment, and then it would pick back up with another soundtrack. And then I think the mistake with this game is that the music never stops. It plays all the time. And
I'm just gonna say amen.
sorry, actually,
Amen, brother.
I think it cut off for there a second, so I wasn't sure, but then it came back on. So I was like, wait, what are you saying? I want to know. But yeah, no, it just,
Amen.
it
I will
just,
say more. I'll
it
just say
just
amen for now.
played the entire time, and I think we were missing that as an immersion piece.
Overstimulating too
Yes, it was
much.
very overstimulating. Yes.
Okay, if I'm in a position where I feel like I need to turn down game music because it makes me feel like I'm about to pull my hair out because it's just stimulating me so much, will not quit. That's a problem.
Yeah. You're
Take
right.
note of that.
You're right.
Yeah. Anyway, I promise we'll have more to say.
But
I will definitely have more to say.
I think
We got
maybe the last,
puzzles.
yes,
We gotta talk
last
about
topic
puzzles.
is
Yeah.
the puzzles, and this is something, oh my goodness, that I feel like I can very honestly attest to how I felt, because I got to do the game live with other people. Is how the puzzles were. And I think I want to mention that it is okay for puzzles to be very hard. And in the sense of, like, hard in the sense, like, you really have to sit there and think about them. Like, you may have to occasionally use the hint. However, what is not okay is when there is no basis to, like, get you started, and even when you try to use hints, they're not helpful, and you literally sometimes get to a puzzle and the puzzle doesn't work, which in my case happened to me live on stream, and everybody was like, wait, why is your puzzle not working? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know, you guys know more than I do. And literally, just that is frustrating as a player. That's frustrating.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about, again, from watching you stream it, I remember more than one of the puzzles. It's like, yeah, you got help from chat. I think chat ended up being your hint system, and I think you ended up
Essentially.
because chat was helping you. You never had to use one of the in-game hints, so you got that like achievement at the end. But I kind of remember you, like, there was stuff various ones of us were trying to give you hints and point you in the right direction, and you were still just like, even after solving it, I felt bad for you because I could see you were kind of just in like, well, I don't know. I like not understanding why you just had to do all the steps that you did.
Yes.
And I know that you are not alone in feeling that way. That a lot of people kind of just felt like I have no clue why that's what that's what the puzzle wanted me to do.
Yeah.
That is very, very frustrating experience as a player. And to not understand. And I know a lot of people commented on like they were kind of missing the little like bit of like when Nancy will kind of make almost like she's thinking aloud and will make
Yes.
little comments about like, oh, I should do this, or almost like she'll kind of explain in a sentence or two like her thought
I
process, so
wonder
then
if I
you
have
as
to put this and this.
yeah,
Yeah,
so then
she'll just
you
like,
yes, so
yes.
like so it's like a
It
little
gets you
then you like,
started. It gets you started.
oh, I know what to do.
And the reason
Yes.
why that's so great is because instead of just having directions, which is very, opposite of immersive, you're like Nancy, you're like, okay, like I don't know why I'm thinking about danger by design specifically. Okay, all I have to do is put this right here. And then if I pour the tea correctly, then Minette will da 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 da. And then also,
Oh yeah.
okay, so I just have to figure out, like, she's literally just like out loud overgoing like what we're about to get into. And then you're on your
And
own.
you're yeah, and you're being given directions, but it doesn't feel
It
like you're
doesn't feel
being
like it's
given
giving you.
directions. It
Exactly,
just feels
exactly.
like, hey, I'm Nancy right now and I'm thinking aloud. Yeah.
Yeah. And it did miss
So
that.
clever.
It did miss that. I just know like I know the probably the one that really made me feel frustrated was the puzzle in Leo's office. And it was the one with the wall. And I remember I did everything right that I was supposed to do. And literally everybody in the chat was like, I don't know why it's not working for you.
Yeah, that's a
Apparently,
common critique
yeah,
of them.
apparently
Yes.
I found like the other option that is supposed to work, but that's not the option it wanted. And it's just like as a Nancy Drew game, like you got to have the puzzles right.
Oh,
They
since since you yes you do. And since you brought that up, I
yeah.
actually just for fun, I actually read through the whole strategy guide after I finished the game just because I wanted to see how they described things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I distinctly remember with that puzzle, there is an actual comment that's in the strategy guide, kind of gives like, look for the symbols on the wall for clues, but then also with a bit of trial and error. Like they literally were basically straight up saying, no, sorry, you're just going to kind of have to guess and check this one. I'm like, how is that
Yeah.
fair? It's a
Yeah.
logic puzzle. Logic
Right.
puzzles shouldn't be left to guessing and checking and hope you pick the right option.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
miss on there on this part of the
Yeah,
game.
I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Now, I do have to say, and I've been looking forward to um, talking about the puzzle specifically. I don't know why. I'm gonna wear my horse shirt on this one and wear it proudly. Must be something about the way their minds worked as they designed those puzzles and the way my mind works. I am an absolute outlier, I feel like, when it comes to Mystery of Seven Keys. I love Mystery of the Seven Keys puzzles.
Yeah.
And I love how quote unquote obtuse they seem to be. And I honestly loved that I felt like I had just got thrown into the deep end
Mm.
and I was not having my hand held and they were just saying like, pay attention, look around, I don't know, think about it, try some different things and figure it out. I genuinely had a really great time. Now, I was not able to beat Mystery of the Seven Keys like the first time through without hints. I did need to look up some hints on some things, but I was able to figure out most of it on my own. And in my case, I didn't have the pressures of like you obviously streaming. You don't want to keep yourself or your audience kind of like stuck on one puzzle for forever, whereas me like in the privacy of my own home just playing on my own time, I was willing to grit it out
Sure.
for as long as possible. Like there were multiple puzzles in that game where I took like at least an hour or two trying to figure it out, I
Sure.
feel like. And so then I felt very accomplished when I
Yeah.
did finally figure it out. Um but I also do think I'm going to guess this is maybe just how each of our minds work. There's something about I guess the intuitions that they had built into those puzzles, just something about the way my mind works. I feel like it made more sense to me than it did to other people. And so, like, if people don't like Mystery of the Seven Keys puzzles, I think they're totally justified in feeling that way. But I'm sitting over here like, okay, I'm the odd one. I actually really like them, and I like how hard they are, and kind of almost like unclear. But then in hindsight, especially when I went back, I'm like, no, actually, like there's a lot of clues, and I think it's like I just missed them because I was probably expecting a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more Nancy hand holding. But again, I also think that's kind of a choice that kind of to me goes along with like somehow this game and also Midnight in Salem. Midnight in Salem actually really doesn't hold on the few puzzles, true puzzles it has. It doesn't hold your hand on them at all.
Mm-hmm.
This I feel like again, I don't know. They might be going for a little bit more of a grown up vibe and doing some more of these like games where they just kind of throw you into an environment and they expect you to explore and kind of figure things out on your own. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah,
So
and well, and I agree. Like
I don't know.
I'm not opposed to having puzzles where you have to, sit there for a long period and try and figure them out. I just feel like in terms of, you know, I guess a game that's already been created to be a certain way,
Yes.
especially the Nancy Drew games, like
I think it doesn't really fit the Nancy mold.
right.
Yes.
Like, because, there are plenty of games out there where that's kind of the vibe. Like, I think of the room puzzles, and to where
Yeah.
it's like you are just thrown into this room and you just kind of have to play around with things until you figure it out. And there were some puzzles in there where I did kind of feel like this feels like the room, where you just have this thing and you have
Yeah.
to interact with it and figure out how to make it work. But I guess maybe that's maybe the disconnect, is that it just didn't vibe with how I feel like it was supposed to. And the game's puzzles, I don't know what it was about them. I just was like, yeah, but it's great that we found this one thing, and I know it's supposed to connect to this other thing, but I just really feel like there needs to be some sort of clarity
There
on
needs yeah.
the association here, because it just was like too disconnected for me. Like
Yes.
oh, it's just, oh.
Well, and this is why like I'm comfortable kind of sitting in this like I'm okay with wearing my horse shirt on this and saying I love like all of those pretty much
As you
all of those
should,
puzzles exactly as they are, but at
as you
the
should.
same time I also am completely on board with no, I do think you need to kind of your dial it back a bit
Yeah,
because these are the Nancy Drew game. This is not The Room. This is not
right.
Mist or Riven or anything in the Cyan um war game making. We have come to expect yes, more clarity and more a little bit more hand holding or whatever you want to call it in the game. And so it does feel kind of like unfair and very like jarring and unexpected that these puzzles just seem so like difficult and confusing. So yeah, I'm totally on board with that. I actually do think I think it would be a good move for game 35. Like don't make puzzles to appease me. I'm not your target here because I do think I'm an outlier and I'm okay with that. Like I do think more like your stance and other people similar to you, like that's what they need to go for.
Yeah,
Make it clearer
yeah,
what we're supposed to be doing and why. Mhm.
I
Yeah.
agree.
So
I agree. But I feel like that probably, I guess, encapsulates or wraps up what we thought of Mystery of the Seven Keys. I don't think there were any more topics to cover. Did you?
for the game itself,
Yeah, no, I don't think so. We kind of
no, I
covered
don't
it.
think so. I mean, I think kind of maybe just to sum it up, I would say, and I don't think I actually verbalized this because I kind of just started conversing with you about the individual specifics. Like for the record, I like Mystery of the Seven Keys.
Hmm.
Um, I
And
enjoy
I do too.
I enjoy replaying it. Midnight in Salem, I get this dread in the pit of my stomach when it's
Yeah,
time to replay it. I don't feel that way about this game. I do
I don't
actually
either.
genuinely um
And
get excited about replaying it. All the things that I mentioned, like humor, world building, lots of things I wish they would change and kind of beef up, but
and it
I'm comfortable
seems
calling it an enjoyable game
and it
and even a
seems
good
that
game.
yes, and it seems that we have even had confirmation that there is a more, or I guess like a higher appreciation for key than mid, and that's what we're leading into, is that we are now talking today in this episode 1 year since the release of Mystery of the Seven Keys, and we've
Yeah.
had some things happen in the last year, leading all the way up to this past month where Her Interactive has done a lot of like social promo for Nancy's birthday, and we're going to talk about that. But I guess guide us through the beginnings after Mystery of the Seven Keys release. Like where have we been, Tori, with in the Clue crew, and as Her Interactive has moved on, where are we now post release?
Okay. So I think we kind of want to talk about this. Let's kind of start with the Her Interactive side of things and
Sure.
then shift more to the Clue crew. So I feel like for the most part, up until the last month, April, when they had their fan month, to me it largely felt like Her Interactive kind of like went back to business as usual.
Yeah.
Um, they did periodically give kind of some more like behind the scenes things about Mystery of the Seven Keys, like things they couldn't really reveal until the game had actually come out. Like there was a little bit of that. And obviously they've done a ton of marketing for Mystery of the Seven Keys. Understandably so. They want people to go out and play their new game. But I just feel like kind of they've gone back more into that like that quiet, like if they're active on social media, it's because one of the contests is happening, like pumpkin carving, cosplay, cookie contest. They did a contest, a fan legacy contest last month. Um there's actually, I will say, now that they've gotten out of their like pre-key marketing, they are doing more currently, I feel like, to kind of get back to sharing more like fans social media posts. There's more in their stories now of things
Oh
like
yeah.
that. They still like some month will come along, like Women's History Month, Black History Month. Like they generally over the years have always done kind of promo and drawn attention to that. So they're still doing that. They don't really use the amateur sleuth blog a whole lot, but that's been like that for a while because blogs just aren't really people's primary form of consuming information. Um, Sales. I feel like these. I feel like that's the big one. Something's always on sale and they want go out and buy this bundle or use this code and get a Nancy Drew game for 50% off. They've been
Yeah.
doing a ton of paid promotions with
They really
content
have. I've noticed
creators
the same thing.
and giveaways. And sometimes they have been including Mystery of the Seven Keys in those giveaways now that the game's been out for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like it's kind of like to me that just feels like a lot of business as usual. Now the unique one, and again that Carter and I have both really appreciated, is they have done quite a bit for fan month in last month in April. They did this legacy contest, so that got more people in the fandom like kind of sharing their personal Nancy Drew
Which I
stories.
loved.
But then
Which I loved.
yes,
That's been my favorite thing they've done on social media in the last year.
yes.
So
And
good.
then also it is Her Interactive's 30th anniversary this year. So they
So
also
good.
used the month of April to they let us into the vault
So good.
and
Which
have
we've
been
been asking for. I literally remember
yes.
I shared some art on my page, and I was like, I just love to see behind the scenes stuff. And someone commented, yes, I just wish they'd open the vault. I think it was actually regular Nancy Drew had commented that. And I commented back and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I love that. Hashtag open the vault. And so I'm actually glad that they came out with this campaign called Open the Vault, because this is literally what we've been wanting to see. It's been
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. If we had recorded this episode a month ago, I feel like we would have hardly had anything to say. We're like, you know
I
what? Her
know.
Interactive is promoting sales and special months, and that's it. But I will give them credit. Like April, I feel like has been a really good month for them because of the vault and getting the fans to post about what Nancy Drew means to them and
Absolutely.
showing off their collections and things. That was a really great strategy on their part. But then, I feel like we're just back to Is there a game 35? When's it coming? I got no clue. I guess when they choose to tell me something, I guess they'll tell me something. We don't have anything right now other than, again, Jazz versus Jazz continuing to follow this trademark for Case of the Missing Clue, which we pretty much all are presuming to be the title of game 35, but
But we feel
no
pretty confident
confirmation.
though, because
Yeah,
like,
no confirmation
they did the
yet.
same thing with Mr. Seven Keys, so we feel pretty confident that is the next game.
Yeah. So that's what's going on kind of more with their social media. And this is more of like they did have a little bit of an issue. This was like August and going into the fall of last year. I don't know how much you were able to follow this, Carter.
I
This
did,
kind of had a little bit of, I feel like, a PR nightmare with
yeah.
Digital River
Yeah,
drama.
I did follow it briefly. I didn't really pay too much attention to it because I kind of felt like it would blow over, and it did. And so,
Yeah. It was more like a flash in the pan, everyone was a buzz about it and kind
yeah,
of upset about it for a bit. And yeah, I feel like I don't feel like this sense that it's ongoing drama. It was kind of more just
yeah,
like they had this little bit of an issue. So if you all don't know, we won't go into all the details, but basically Her Interactive had been, partnered with Digital River for years, selling the games on their own storefront. If you wanted to buy a game directly from Her Interactive, you were getting it through Digital River, and there's been a lot of fan complaints over the years about Digital River's like customer service and people not liking that you only have so many days to access your purchases, otherwise you're going to lose them. Like, so there's generally been not a lot of love for Digital River, but then it came out like Her Interactive was trying to change how they do their storefront, and that was a whole thing. And the big issue was there was some drama over people trying to get physical copies of Mystery of the Seven Keys and suddenly being told your order has been canceled. And the official statement was it's because credit or debit cards didn't go through. That's what they say. I don't know. That there was some speculation on fans' side of like maybe Digital River, maybe they hadn't even produced enough copies. Like, I don't know. You all can. I would suggest if you all want to know more about that, like check Hugh Miller's vlogs on his YouTube channel or check his blog on his website because he covered all of it a lot more thoroughly than we need to. So it ended up. I guess the good news is the more stuff that came out and the more that was revealed, and it seems like Digital River hadn't even been paying people for, hadn't been paying their developers for things. Like they ended up like they just cut ties finally with Digital River. And now they're working with a company called Fast Spring. So, but again, that was kind of just more, as I agree with Carter, seemed more like just a little bit of a couple
a
months of
tiff.
drama. It gave us something to talk about, I guess, for a few weeks, but that's kind of just faded away. Yeah, that's kind of what's going on with her interactive. Like I just like we have no idea. We don't know how Mystery of the Seven Keys is doing in terms of sales.
Right.
No idea how the company's doing. Um, in terms of employees, I know that Rue chose to move on last fall, so she's not on the marketing team anymore. As far as we know, it's just Indy and Brigella. Um, but I will say, at least from that perspective, I do feel like those ladies, and again, because of the marketing strategy, they feel a little bit more, it kind of feels like the Little Jackalope days. I feel like a little bit
Yeah.
more where there kind of is whatever people feel about Her Interactive itself. I think generally we can have a lot of like love and appreciation for like them. I got no complaints about the job they're doing. I feel like they
Mm-mm.
are working really hard to connect with the fans.
Oh yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. So, Clue Crew, however, I want Carter to say whatever you would like to. I don't know how much you want to say
Oh goodness.
about what you kind of have felt in terms of like the Clue Crew side of things. 1 year later. And you did already mention, we can just bring it up again briefly, like that you kind of felt like right after Mystery of the Seven Keys, people, not just you, kind of went into hibernation to experience this game and avoid spoilers. But then as people started climbing out of that, like, hey, how
Yeah,
do you feel? How
I
do you feel we're doing as a Clue Crew right now, 1 year later from Mystery of the Seven Keys?
well, one of the reasons why I say that I think that them opening the vault and having fan month and celebrating Nancy's birthday and their 30th is the best thing they've done on social media so far is because this is the most activity I've seen in the last year is in this last month. It seems that marketing strategy that they have implemented this month has been very good for them. Yeah, no, it's a bit awkward almost to discuss because it feels there's something just it is a bit odd. I think people hibernated, and then to return after that hibernation almost felt like now what, almost kind of
Ye-
like a man, like what a journey and what a long
It
climb.
was such a high.
It was such a
Yes.
high, and then it just fell, really, like just fell like a roller coaster, very big drop. And I think to build back up to something that is as equally exciting as what they just did for Mystery of the Seven Keys promo is going to be very challenging to do, because you can't just do the same thing and expect the same results. I do not think that they could do the same thing and get the same amount of energy that they did with Mystery of the Seven Keys with this next game. They would have to figure
Mm.
out a different way to do it. And I don't have any ideas. I haven't really thought about what could their next thing. I haven't really thought about it. I'm not saying that they couldn't do something spectacular. They most certainly could, because I believe in their marketing strategies. I think that they've done a lot of brilliant things in the past couple of years, but it's just a bit awkward. I feel like in terms of the Clue Crew space, I feel like I notice a lot more disengagement with things that used to be very highly engaging things for fans. Um, I feel like in terms of talking about the Nancy Drew games, things used to be a lot more nostalgia based, and I do not feel like that is the case anymore. I feel like people have sometimes can revisit it, but for the most part have like tucked away that and just put it in a box, and the box is sitting to the side for right now at this time.
Mhm.
Because, and this is just talking from my own experience posting things, you know, all the way when I started the page back during the pandemic and up into the release of Key, any any nostalgic Nancy Drew thing could be posted and would do really well. Fans would link to it, attach to it, flock to it, be like, "Oh my gosh, I love it so much." And then here, I would say in the last year or so, I have just noticed that engagement has just steadily declined and decreased, both on Instagram and YouTube. I feel like people are not consuming the same content that they once were. Um, and I don't know. So that's why I say it's a bit, I feel like, awkward to talk about, because it's almost like a what's okay, well then what's next, If we're not really into the nostalgia based conversations, which is what a lot of us have to have, because the the old style of games that we're used to are 10 years old. That's how long ago Sea of Darkness came out. That's how long ago the the games all past that since. Then we really only have two games to discuss, and they're very it's very I guess polarizing in many ways to talk about, because there's lots of split opinions. And so because Her Interactive is only coming out with games very slowly, it is kind of winding down on what people can do content wise. And so I do kind of have a little bit of almost like a guarded up response to all of this because I'm like, ooh, I wonder where that's gonna leave us as a fandom because you truly can only squeeze out so much content about everything for so long to the point where uh, it becomes unsqueezable, I guess I should say. Uh,
Yeah. No, actually, you kind of just made me. I hadn't really considered that the whole of like they've only got 2 games out in the modern era, and there have been actual like years long gaps in between them. And like we're hoping that the game 34 to game 35 gap isn't as
5 years,
long.
half a decade.
But again, 1 year later, we still don't know anything more than it's probably called Case of the Missing Clue.
We're
So, and
missing the
we
clue
did not,
of
for the
information.
record, Mystery of the Seven Keys does not have a teaser trailer at the end of it. So they didn't even tease us with a game 35 officially to look forward to. Yeah, it's kind of like, well, what is there to talk about? Because I kind of feel like when would the prime time to talk about Mystery of the Seven Keys have been? Well, I feel like it kind of would have been like in the early days of it coming out, but nobody wanted to talk about it because everyone wanted to play it and not get spoiled. So then I feel like the timing of when people started talking about Mystery of the Seven Keys was kind of a little bit weird because people were re-emerging onto Instagram or wherever else at different periods to talk about it. And um now it's a year later, and so I kind of feel like yeah, like a year, I guess to me a year feels like a lifetime for a Nancy Drew game to be out, maybe because we're used to like, well, we'd already have another game by now under the old model.
True.
And so it's kind of like, well, we can't just keep talking about this game that just came out, and no one wants to talk about Midnight in Salem, I feel like, pretty much except to bash it. I know Midnight in Salem kind of has its a little bit like of defenders, and I respect those people who are trying to draw attention to maybe some hidden good qualities it has. But yeah, it's kind of just like you can only say so much about a trademark for a possible game 35. So we're kind of sitting in, I totally agree. We're sitting in this weird limbo, like what's next? Like what do we talk about? And how much can I say about games 1 through 32 that hasn't already been said? Well, I suppose we're making this podcast, so we believe it's possible to say things that and have conversations that maybe haven't really happened yet. But yes, in terms of, I totally agree with you. Like, I saw a very clear change in my engagement on social media. It just totally plummeted after Mystery of the Seven Keys came out. And once in a while, something seems to really grab hold of people, but that feels more like a rarity than, whereas before it kind of felt like I could post just about anything and find people who'd get really excited about it
Oh,
and would get
absolutely.
on board with the nostalgia and things like that. So I'm definitely been feeling the same way as you about all of that. And yeah, it's kind of just like, I don't know. But that's kind of how we feel about the modern era in general. Like, what is there to say other than Josiah Crowley, only time will tell? Like,
And only time
uh
will tell. Like
I don't know.
we really won't know until we take it day by day and then live out whatever this next era will bring.
Yeah. And I guess whenever we are quite hopeful that a game 35 will come, I'm just so curious to see, yes, how will they market it? And will we care? And
A part of me actually has been very
will people
hopeful
be, will be willing to give it a chance?
that
How
game,
many of those people who feel at the end of the rope are like, how many more chances are they willing to give her interactive to get a
right?
Nancy Drew game like right in their
A part of me is
from their
hoping
perspective?
that in game 35 they will actually bring back something that's really well known from the series, like a character, or that the
Oh.
storyline will be something like something returns, like something very dramatic in that way, because I think almost in a sense that's the way you would have to go to get people hooked back after a limbo. Um, and that's just kind of what I've been thinking and hoping, like, oh, please let there be like something really bold, but that is something that will entice people to be like, okay, I got to know and I have got to play. But we won't know until we get there.
Or they could finally go for gusto and put Ned in a game
That's what I
and
was
let us
thinking.
go crazy.
That's what I was thinking.
Especially
I just
because
didn't want to say it.
Sometimes it felt like Mystery of the Seven Keys wanted to do that. And even Midnight, yeah, they keep hinting at that.
Mm-hmm.
That would certainly catch people's attention.
I'm saying I think that that's something that they should consider if they're going to do another game. That's got to be something big and bold. Big and bold. Like, I feel like that's the way to go if you want to kind of rein it back in. So,
Yeah. So this is another thing we shall see.
yep. But wow, what a great conversation. It was so great talking with you today, Tori, about these things, because these are things that I guess I've been in my, like, circling inside me in my head for over a year. And it's just now finally deciding to get out in conversations. This is good. It's good. I enjoyed hearing all your onions.
Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. And I am curious and cautiously optimistic about what the future may hold.
Yeah.
We shall see.
We shall see. And yeah, well, we thank you so much for kind of catching Tori and I's conversation. You know, we love to deep dive and we love to just cover all the topics, you know. So it's very exciting that you guys get to join us in these, and we get to read some of your thoughts and comments below, because that is something we just enjoy doing, is engaging with you guys during the premiere and then after when you catch it later, just to see kind of like, oh yeah, I think the same thing, or, you know, that's just really fun. And we're very excited for you to catch us in the next few episodes, because we've got some great things coming here towards the latter half of the season.
Yes. I think we've always been letting people know what they have to look forward to the next week. So please come back next week. We are going to we teased this multiple times. We tease you no longer. We are finally ready to do our deep dive, as promised, on these storylines. And this is such a massive conversation that it's going to be split in two. So we come back, we are going to talk about storylines in the classic and the golden era. And once again, just going to look at how Her Interactive set the stage and kind of set our expectations for what we want out of a good Nancy Drew mystery.
It's going to be a good dive.
Yep. 2 eras next week, and then we'll save the other 3 eras for part 2.
And so we
check it out with us.
Can't wait for you to listen along, and we'll see you guys again next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.